and face the flag, remain standing, and face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready? Mayor Parrish.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Blanco.
Here.
Councilman Bover.
Here.
Councilwoman Warner.
Here.
Councilman Whipple.
Here.
City Attorney Garganese.
Here.
City Manager Takanich.
Here.
And Assistant City Manager Fuhrer.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, I make a motion,
We're gonna,
I have,
go ahead, John.
city manager?
yes, Mr. Mayor, this is kind of an unorthodox. I know there's a lot of people here. We're trying to expedite the agenda to move people to get to items. So what we would like to do is move council business items number 1 through 4, which all are appointments to boards. Well, 3 appointments to a board, and then 1 confirming the mayor's nomination to the Housing Authority. Move those 4 items to the consent agenda. And then the other thing, as you know, we have a number of individuals here with us this evening that have traveled from Orlando and further related to the 2 bond transactions, the advanced refunding and then the new issuance of about $42 million related to the utility system. I'd like to see, because there's still work to be done on some of that in terms of, especially the new money, is if we can move that item up prior to delegations, and that will free out, because I see a lot of people standing, it'll free up some space, and we can get that done and over with. And that would be under city business items Roman numeral 6-1 for Roman numeral 6-4. Those are all related to the 2 bond, the advanced refunding, and then the bond for the new money, as well as the amending the current resolution.
Motion to approve with changes.
Oh, hold on a second.
Okay.
And that's 6 what?
So it's city business, items number Roman numeral 6-1 through 4. So it's the first 4 under city business.
Okay.
Moving those up to before delegations.
Okay.
And that'll free up some space.
And then moving all of council business.
Well, there will still be items number 5 and 6 that we would do under city business and
we'll do that
multi-year contracts as that period came along.
So we're gonna move it up to hit a deadline.
Yes,
But then we're also going to move council business to consent.
correct, because they're
Okay.
all appointments. They're appointments to Mr.
Board.
Ed Green to the Code Enforcement Board, Mr.
Yeah.
Kurt Chandler to US1 CRA, Mr. Paul Johnson, Sustainability Advisory Committee, and confirming the mayor's nomination of Clinton Warren as a resident member of the Cocoa Housing Authority.
Okay.
Okay, I'm next.
Okay.
Okay. Also, on, hold on there. Oh, was that public hearing 4? I'm looking at the hard copy. Yeah. Okay, so, public hearing number 4, John?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna,
On what?
under,
Public hearing 4,
Under
are you talking
public
about the
hearings.
ordinance
Item 4.
related to the large-scale mixed-use building in certain properties in the Cocoa Waterfront Overlay District?
yeah, that one, we're gonna, well, 2 things. One is, a lot of people are here to hear about the ordinance and then talk about the hotel. So, what I'm gonna, also make a quick statement. On the last meeting, we had, wow, we got people coming in. Last meeting, we had a lot of folks, and it got a little heated on my part, and I apologize to who I was talking to and whoever I may have offended. But I talked to a few of the ladies that were speaking in the last meeting at delegations, And I watched the replay, and I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is a heated subject. But also, I've had a lot of pro phone calls on the hotel at the old City Hall site, and a lot of negatives. So it didn't come to my attention, well, it came to my attention when I was talking to a friend of mine that we had, that builds down here occasionally. We never had a workshop on this, on the hotel site, and a city staff workshop. So I think one reason why this is getting so emotional is we're not really having we didn't go through the usual full process. I'm for a hotel if it meets the zoning and the architectural requirements and all the legal tests. But what I'm going to request, I'm asking the council right now is to do this right. Let's table this, go to a city workshop where the same people show up and everybody can talk, and we can dedicate it to that.
Do we need,
No, I'm serious.
no, do we need to, because this agenda item doesn't necessarily have everything to do with the hotel. We can do this and still have a workshop because we're not approving a hotel.
Exactly.
No, we're not.
We're making a zoning
Right.
change.
Right.
We can make that zoning change, whether there's a hotel, a parking garage, or whatever goes on that property. The zoning change needs to be done regardless of what we do. So personally, I would prefer to go ahead and do the zoning change and then have a public meeting. I know the developer had public meetings, and I too have had
Yeah.
citizens say the
Well, that's
city
what-
did not do a public meeting.
That's what worried me was,
Yeah.
I mean, the developer had his meeting, but the people need to have theirs.
Well, and
Okay.
that's, and
I mean, I have no
I'm
problem with that.
100% with you on that. I'm fine with doing a public meeting with the staff and
Okay,
with
so I
us
tell you
there.
what, tell you what,
But I still think we can move forward with tonight's agenda
tell you-
item because we're not approving a
Yeah,
hotel.
Yeah, I tell you what, let's compromise. Let's move that agenda item up to the front. How about
Okay.
that? All right?
You mean to the front of
Yes,
public
okay.
hearings? To the front of
To
the public
front of
hearing?
Public hearings.
Yes.
The first public hearing, okay,
So number 4 would become number 1.
okay. That's fine. So, is that
That
all the
okay? That's
agenda
okay. changes?
If so, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda with those changes.
You got those, Gary?
I got it all.
You still need a workshop.
Yes. I'll get with Karen for the purposes of scheduling.
So we're not gonna move, we'll handle this tonight. We're gonna do a city workshop on this as a next step.
Okay.
And we're gonna listen to this now. I'd be within, I don't know, when.
I'll get with the Community Services Director. I do know we have some upcoming budget meetings, but. Okay, well,
Well, nothing's changing, like
think what-
Brenda
I think
said.
with the s-
All we're hearing is the zoning, so.
what the focus of the focus of the actual change is not to approve a hotel.
No.
It's to change. Okay,
Okay.
I understand, but
Yeah.
the actual amendment as requested by the Community Redevelopment Agency was to amend the zoning code, which they actually developed and proffered to the city for its consideration, which is a form-based code. So they requested an amendment to that code. So now ultimately, that could lead to the hotel, but at the end of I think as Councilwoman Warner indicated, it involves more than just the former City Hall property. It was looked at in context, and I don't want to kind of share some of the information as related, I think Karen's going to share, but it was looked at in context of preserving the historic Cocoa Village. That was one of the issues that staff raised when the project was originally proposed, but the amendment is a zoning amendment. It's not an approval for a hotel. The hotel would still have to, if this amendment was to pass to the zoning, would still have to go through all the requisite site planning, have to go to P&Z, it'd have to go through all
RDA.
those other requirements. And if there was if they needed variances, they'd have to go through everything with that. And it was actually, even after this, it would still have to go back to the CRA, because the CRA has yet to work with the developer, because I think they're waiting on this, and in large measure, some engineering, the questions being answered on whether or not they can, do that. So this is just an amendment to the zoning district. In other words, it's amending the map, the zoning map. The hotel is, while that was the genesis or the catalyst of this amendment, it was looked at more holistically. We'll schedule the public meeting as quickly as we possibly can. I will get with the community service director as well as the city clerk and look at the city calendar and what we can do. Maybe, Karen, we can pass out a piece of paper and ask people to put their name, their phone number, or email, and we'll make sure anybody that puts their name, phone number, in there, they're either personally called or they received an email related to that public workshop.
And that's why,
But I apologize, I think. Yeah, it's, because the
Yeah,
item's
fine.
coming up.
and that's
The-
why I said, let's do this, postpone it, but we'll do the zoning tonight, and we'll revisit the hotel and all the details later. So we'll do that at a workshop.
So we have
okay.
a motion and a second?
Motion, we have a second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right.
That was approval of the agenda change.
That was
I
it.
make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as written with the adoption. The amendments to adding the council business 1 through 4 to the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, John, you want to do
Now,
the 1 through 4?
yeah, now we're going to do items number 1 through 4, and the first will be the acceptance Stantex 2018 revised final fiscal year 2018-2019, of which Finance Director Rebecca Bowman will do.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is requesting to accept Stantex 2018 revised final fiscal year 2018-2019 utility revenue sufficiency analysis update. Just to give you some background, a detailed utility revenue sufficiency study for fiscal years 2018 and 2019 was prepared by Stantec and presented to City Council on July 24th, 2018, and Council accepted the report at that time. During the utility bond discussions, City staff requested Stantec clarify and update the return on investment rate within the sufficiency analysis to reflect the calculation methodology consistent within the new master bond resolution. As a reminder, the rate of return or return on investment is used to calculate the transfer from the utility fund to the general fund. The updated report will be included within the city's utility bond documentation as it is referenced within the master bond resolution in relation to these other items on the agenda. Staff is available for questions should you have any.
I don't have any questions. I would just like to say thank you to Stantec for a 31-page detailed report, which is wonderful. It's amazing what they can produce. So I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate all their little charts and graphs and comparisons. It makes life so much easier than it used to be 20 years ago to discuss budget items. So.
Yep. Okay.
You make a motion to accept.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. All right.
And Mr. City Manager, are we going to post that report on the city's website in case somebody else wants to read it besides us?
Yes, it actually gets posted with this, but it actually will be posted. And to add to your thank you, certainly would like to thank the city attorney, the bond team, the finance staff, the utilities director, our financial advisor, and assistant city manager, as we all worked through on making sure there was, so if there was something to happen today and all of us were gone, our predecessors would know completely and exactly where to go to the CAF or where to go here or go there to determine the methodology, and it's clear. So we'd certainly appreciate Mike and Eric's with Stantex, their flexibility in assisting us with this process.
Yeah.
So glad we found them. Somebody found them, whoever found them.
Thank you, John. Okay. All right. What,
Next.
So,
Number 2?
The next item is a request to approve a resolution amending Resolution 93-27, which is referred to as the Master Resolution, as amended to modernize certain provisions. Resolution 93-27 was adopted by City Council on August 18, 1993, and it authorized the issuance of obligations of the city entitled City of Cocoa, Florida Water and Sewer System Revenue Bonds. The master resolution has been amended several times since 1993. On advice from the city's financial advisor and bond counsel, it is in the best interest of the city to modernize certain provisions of the master resolution and recognize changes that have taken place in the financial markets. Amendments include amending definitions of certain things, amending Section 502 to create special funds designated as Working Capital Reserve Fund and Return on Investment Fund. It adds a section that describes the flow of funds into and out of the new Working Capital Reserve Fund. It also adds a section which describes the flow of funds into and out of the new Return on Investment Fund, and it changes from 2/3 to a majority of the holders required to consent to and approve the adoption of amendments to the master resolution. Additionally, there's fluidity with the upcoming bond transaction. Therefore, staff is requesting as part of this agenda item that the city manager and the mayor, in consultation with the city's bond team, be given the authority to make technical modifications to the proposed amendments to the extent necessary prior to pre-closing on the upcoming bond transaction, and that the mayor be authorized to execute the final version of the resolution, including incorporating any necessary technical amendments. Staff is available if you have questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No question?
I make a motion that we amend the resolution for 9327, the master resolution, as it amended to modernize certain provisions. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good.
Item 18-274 is a request to approve a resolution supplementing Resolution 93-27, which is the master resolution, authorizing issuance of water and sewer system revenue bonds, noted as Series 2018 New Money Bonds, an amount not to exceed $50 million to finance certain capital improvements to the system, and to authorize the negotiated sale of Series 2018 New Money Bonds to the underwriters. To give you some background, there have been capital improvements that have been funded by revenue and reserves operating on a pay-as-you-go basis. And as a result, net position has fallen to a level that would only cover 2 months of operating costs. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this resolution that supplements the master resolution and requests authorization to issue the Series 2018 New Money Bonds in an amount not to exceed $50 million to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of certain improvements to the system, and a deposit to the reserve fund as required in the master resolution, and the cost of issuing Series 2018 New Money Bonds. In working with a financial advisor, staff determined this is in the best interest of the city. On April 24th, 2018, council approved the selection of 2 bond underwriting firms, and they were authorization is requested to reward the negotiated sale of the Series 2018 New Money Bonds to the underwriters in accordance with the terms of the bond purchase agreement. And then once again, in addition to requesting approval of that, staff is requesting that as part of this agenda, the city manager and mayor, in consultation with the city's bond team, be given authority to make technical modifications to the resolution, including all exhibits, attachments thereto, to the extent necessary prior to the pre-closing on the upcoming bond transaction, and that the mayor and other necessary city officials be authorized as applicable to execute the final version of the resolution, including any exhibits and attachments thereto. Staff is available should you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
By approving this $50 million, up to $50 million bond, how much reserve time will it give the city? Instead of 2 years, will it be 4 years, 5 years? or
Well,
what?
Actually, it's months. We
months.
currently have.
Months? I'm
Reserve.
sorry, yeah, months.
Our revenue sufficiency analysis, you know, and with the amendments here is that we will maintain a minimum of 4 months, which is a GFOA, or Government Finance Officer Association best practice. So we're gonna maintain a minimum. So for the first 2 years, we will have the 4 months, and then we're gonna, and then over the next 2 years, work to get up to 6 months, because we think that's even a better financial position to be in.
That's without any monies coming in, you'll be able to operate the city for those months.
The utility system, yes,
The
sir.
utility
Because
system.
these funds are all being, you know, acquired for capital projects. There's no
Okay.
funds here being borrowed for operating expenses. These are all specifically identified capital projects to enhance and expand the utility system.
Make it better. Yeah. That's good.
Okay,
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, next is item 18-275. This is requesting approval of a resolution authorizing the issuance of water and sewer system refunding revenue bonds, Series 2018, noted as Series 2018 refunding bonds, not to exceed $22 million to refund the water and system revenue bonds, Series 2009A and 2009B. Staff is seeking to advance refund the refunded bonds maturing on and after October 1st, 2019, on October 1st, 2019. As a result of this, the city would issue Series 2018 taxable refunding bond to finance the defeasance of the refunded bonds, fund a deposit to the reserve fund, and pay costs of issuing the series taxable refunding bond. As a reminder, advance refunding is a practice where outstanding bonds are refinanced by the proceeds of a new bond issue. This is usually done to take advantage of interest rates. The city maintains a debt management policy which was adopted by City Council that provides for refunding of outstanding debt when it can achieve a net value savings of at least 3%. The city has received an offer for purchase of the existing outstanding bonds in order to achieve debt service savings by refunding the refunded bonds. The Series 2018 taxable refunding bond will be at a taxable interest rate of 3.1% until July 15th, 2019. And then at that time, subject to determination of taxability, the tax-exempt interest rate will be 3.63%. There is consideration that the U.S. Congress could eliminate this tax-exempt preference between the closing date on or before August 22nd, 2018 of the Series 2018 refunding bonds, and then the exchange date of the other bonds on July 15th, 2019. And if that occurred, the bonds would be at a taxable interest rate of 4.81%. City did consult with a financial advisor, and assuming a worst-case scenario that the bonds would stay taxable, the taxable interest rate would be 4.81% versus a tax-exempt rate of 3.63%. Given that that's a possibility, the city was still realizing that present value savings of approximately 4.66%, or just over $1 million over the term of the bond. Additionally, the city manager consulted with the city's federal lobbyist on any potential tax reforms eliminating this tax-exempt preference. And as a result, that person advised that there's no certainty of Congress. However, the current emphasis is on reinvesting and addressing the infrastructure backlog. So it suggests that it is remote that the legislature would change. City staff is recommending City Council authorize this transaction as it does still exceed our debt management policy of achieving a net present value savings of at least 3%. Again, I would like to note, if the tax exempt preference is not eliminated, the net present value savings would increase to approximately 6.32%, or 1.36 million, as opposed to $1 million over the term of the bond. Again, related to this transaction, due to the fluidity of the upcoming refunding transaction and numerous documents involved in the transaction, staff is requesting that the city manager and mayor, in consultation with the city's bond team, be given authority to make technical modifications to the refunding documents to the extent necessary prior to the pre-closing on the transaction, and that the mayor be authorized to execute the final version of the resolution, including and incorporating any necessary technical amendments. Staff is available if you have questions.
Any questions?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
So here, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
This was-
Very good, long-winded. Very
This was
good.
great bedtime reading, by the way.
Not information.
Just 77 million bucks, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Which one is it?
We're gonna do delegations, and then we're gonna, since we moved the zoning of 603 Brevard, we're gonna move it right in behind it. So we're gonna start with delegations. Is that okay? Everybody? Same page?
Yeah.
All right. So, and we're gonna go to 2 minutes?
Yeah.
2 minutes. We have a lot of cards, so here we go. One second. Oh, man, who's I looking for? Green? Ed Green? Ed Green? Yeah, yeah, there you go, there you go. He's here. Are gonna be.
Edward Green, 104 Riverside Drive, in Cocoa.
Give me the details.
Mr. Mayor,
you doing?
council members, Mr. City Manager, thank you for your forbearance and letting me move up front. I have a little personal thing that you're aware of, so thanks for that. I'm here to speak in favor of the proposed amendment to the zoning. We know that this is separate from the hotel.
It's an agenda item, so we need to speak under that item, correct, Mr. City Attorney? It's talking about the zoning amendment,
It's a public hearing.
but we're doing delegations right now.
We're in delegations.
I would,
Mr. Manager,
would-
I
I
have
would hope-
spoken to the council ahead, and I have a personal situation at home
all
that
right. Yeah, yeah,
requires me to
please
leave,
go
and they
ahead.
were making an
Okay.
exception
Go ahead.
on my behalf.
What do you want to do, Ian?
Thank you for that forbearance.
What do you think?
It's council's prerogative.
Yeah, I think
If you
both.
want to let him speak at this point, but there is a public hearing item on that topic.
I do have a specific stack for that.
Yeah.
And I have another general stack for delegation and hotel,
Perfect.
but it's only zoning. Okay, so go ahead, Ed, sorry.
Thanks again. I'm speaking in favor of the zoning amendment without regard to whether the hotel is built or not. The zoning amendment's necessary, it's important. It allows flexibility to build more than 5 stories on that spot and the adjacent spots going south along the block. What people are afraid of, from my understanding, is when they see the possibility of a 104-foot building on any of those spots, it's daunting. Nobody wants to see it. But I think what's important for people to understand, and as the council probably knows, there are other things besides zoning that have to be met in order to build on that. Notably, there's the City of Cocoa Comprehensive Plan, Policy 1.2.1.7, which requires site plan review and requires things to be considered such as building height, beauty aesthetics, human comfort, creating a sense of place, special placement, civic uses, human scale architecture. There are also provisions in Chapter 15 of these zoning codes that allow the city to put constraints on building size and height if those are necessary, and we know that the city council has the ability to limit height, the zoning notwithstanding. So I would encourage people not to be afraid of that number. I would like to also say that a lot of these people here are here for the hotel. Those who are against the hotel are talking about height. They think that beating the zoning beats the hotel. Just like a show of hands, who likes the hotel? And if I have time for just one more statement to make up for the time that was lost in the discussion here, this is also an opportunity for the council to show the public that they are listening to what the people have to say.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Green.
you, Ed.
Nicely said, thank you.
Very good.
Okay, Tammy Eastburn?
Council, City Manager, I'm here tonight to follow up on a directive that you gave the city manager
me.
last month.
Name and address.
Oh, Tammy Eastburn, employee, 6695 Cordell Road.
Thank you.
I'm here to follow up on a directive that you gave the city manager last month, speaking to me regarding matters at hand. I know he's a busy man, so I attempted to remind him last week by sending him 2 emails. Mr. Ducanage stood at my desk 5 minutes before noon today and said that he apologized for not getting back with me because he had negotiations, bond hearings, and other important things to do. And he had given council a report. It took me by surprise because the directive was to meet with me first and then give council the report. I did not understand what report was given to council and what was on the report. He explained he was very busy and did not have time to meet with me this week because he was leaving Friday and would not be able to get back with me until he met with the secretary to set an appointment. What I heard was, I'm too busy to deal with someone of your stature. In my 30 years with the city, Mr. Ducanage has the most administrative staff working for him than any other city manager, yet he had not even had the courtesy to acknowledge my emails. At this point, this is what I was trying to get across to council. You hired him as your leader. This is the type of leadership we have been subject to under his term. Clearly, the city manager does not feel people of my position is significant enough to be even acknowledged, even though he was given instructions by this council to do so. Under this type of leadership, I would have to say I have never seen the turnover in employees, including directors and managers, leaving the city of this magnitude. Leadership starts at the top and trickles down. If the very top is not showing passion and inspire to lead others, it will never work. It will cause contempt and eventually operate as it is now. It seems that only the people that Mr. Ducanage will associate with are on the 3rd floor southeast wing. These seem to be the same people that are outsourcing our jobs. We're going to outsource ourselves right out of jobs. And I did have others, but I was expecting 5 minutes. I had it like down to 3, but there was a lot more to be said.
You can come back.
I just,
Thank-
I like to be heard, and I think a lot of people would like to be heard.
Thank you, Tammy.
Did you get a report?
Can I get a report?
Yes.
No?
Council, well, if you recall, at the meeting at which she presented an item that was part of collective bargaining, of which she's not a member of the union. And so if you recall, last night, we had a work session, and I presented the information in response, and that's when I went to, because there's still one piece of information in terms of data. It's a 7-year data line related to salaries and the adjustments on the averages. So, and we're also validating the information that she provided. But I did present you the information related to the healthcare costs last night, because it was my understanding that you wanted me to report back to you on her concerns, and then I was gonna follow up, and that's what I shared with her today.
All the data.
Yeah, I need, so that's,
Okay, you did.
I'd like to just see what was given to you.
I indicated we would do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Okay. Dolores Purdy?
Good afternoon.
Dolores?
My name is Dolores Purdy. I live in Cocoa. I'm here because
What's your address?
1053 Willow Lane, Cocoa, Florida. I would like to thank the officers that showed up at my house on the 27th of July. The officers, well, the one officer, he remained very calm, very professional, and he kept the situation from getting totally out of hand. I was so nervous and beyond myself that I had to go back into my house because it got out of control very quickly. My son was pulled over. He was followed home and pulled over, and the officer refused to tell him why he pulled him over. He refused to give him his ID number, and he yelled at him and told him he had plenty of time to stop. My son told him that he didn't feel safe, so he came home 6 houses down from where he was pulled. Not 6 miles, not 6 minutes, 6 houses. The officer said he pulled him over because his vehicle was not registered. He provided his driver's license, he provided the registration. It never calmed him down. It was as if somebody had given him a Cracker Jack box and his prize wasn't in there, and he just was having a tantrum. The other officers that were there, had they not been there, I just don't know what would have happened, and I don't know who they are. I was told I was going to be given a report, but I just want to thank them for being there. The officer never apologized. He just left. After yelling, he yelled at me to a point where I just couldn't even believe this. I told my son, I said, I'm going to call his sergeant, at which time he told me that the other officer said, Mama, he is the sergeant. That was the shocking part of it all. He was the sergeant. If we're going to say we're about building communities and building relationships, that's not how we do it. It's about trust. That was harassment. My son had registration, his vehicle was registered. All of a sudden they said, once they got his paperwork, and oh, it's all of a sudden registered. How does that happen at 6:30 on a Friday? It just doesn't happen that way. This was just harassment. But I want to thank whoever the officer was there with that sergeant. I thank him from the bottom of my heart, because on a scale of 1 to 10, my fibromyalgia had shot up to 15 with pain. So whoever he is, sir, July the 27th, please thank the other officer that was there with Officer Rush, Sergeant Rush. He was very disrespectful, unprofessional, and it was very unbecoming of an officer. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you for coming.
Well, wait a minute. Did you leave your contact information with the chief? Make sure that you leave your phone number, your
I
contact
never called
information,
a lady that was, I don't have my glasses
so you can
on.
have a one-on-one with the chief.
Mr.
Okay.
City Manager.
Yes.
The chief.
I did speak with
I
her on
called
the
the chief.
phone, and it's also an open investigation at this time.
Okay.
And another thing, I was told that, my son said he didn't feel safe to stop down the street, and I was told that usually applies to when it's dark or an unmarked vehicle. I've never felt so terrified in broad daylight with a marked car. And it was just beyond, you just had to be there. It was just,
We won't, ma'am, we don't
Okay.
tolerate that.
That's right.
Allegedly,
I would like for
okay?
them to
So,
live up to whatever they put on paper. This officer
Please.
was commended
Yeah.
for exemplifying the ideas of the police department, and that's what it was,
Yeah.
then it's sad.
Yeah.
It really is heartbreaking. Thank you.
no,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
John Foster?
John Foster, 121 St. Charles Street. I'm ill-prepared. Mr. Whipple and I have been on the phone several times over the last couple of weeks.
It's good to meet you, Mr. Foster.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Yes.
So, I've been trying to get a fence put around a property that I own that is right next door to my house. I bought a vacant lot next door to my home, planned on using it as a yard. When I called zoning and planning, when I purchased the property, told them what I wanted to do, they told me no problem. We're here to help you, we're not here to stand in your way. And every time I've tried to do something with that property, it's been no. The code currently reads that you cannot put a fence or, correction, a structure on a vacant lot. Fence is considered a structure, but this isn't just a vacant lot. This is my yard. I bought this lot next door to me to use as my yard. They're telling me I need to now go through many extra steps to tie the two properties together. Once I tie the properties together, I can't separate them again. My intentions were to use this for a time and eventually sell the property off. Now apparently I'm not going to be able to do that.
You should be able to do that.
So what I would like to do is visit the code for being able to put up a fence around an adjoining property that happens to be vacant. Okay? Thank you.
But the thing is, Mr. Foster, I just wanted to let you know that when you called me up about your issue,
Yes, sir.
my concern was that you wasn't able to receive the response in a timely manner.
That was something else,
That
yes.
concerned me, and I know that they've been shorthanded.
And they were, and I know that Doty has
Yes.
been, she's
Yes, she
been
has been
way
shorthanded.
underwater. And I understand that.
Yes.
But it took me months, and I finally had to get Mr. Whipple involved
Yeah.
because I couldn't get anybody to call me back. I couldn't get anybody to communicate with me. They can only meet with me face to face 10 to 2 Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, I'm working. I can't take off.
And to me, that's unacceptable. Yeah.
Totally.
Your fence
unacceptable.
issue, I don't understand why you couldn't fence them both in until
Me
you.
either.
Until you sell your investment. I mean,
Me
it's
either.
just-
Isn't that?
But that's what the
board of
code says.
adjustment that-
It- Well, I know the assistant city attorney and the community services staff were looking at a resolution on how to assist Mr. Foster within the constraints of this current code. So I know they're working together on that.
So something they told me, and I'm going to tell you, I was first told Friday was a week ago. So this coming Friday be 2 weeks ago. I was told, good news, Mr. Foster, after many phone calls, we're finally going to be able to issue you a permit. We're not going to be able to sign off on the permit as being completed until after you tie the two properties together on a tax deed, which means that I don't actually have to have them platted together. Put them together on a tax deed, I can then separate them. It's not the same as having them platted together.
That's too much.
There's too much.
That's too
Well,
much.
it gets worse though. So I asked, when can I come pick up my permit? She told me, I'm gonna be working on it Monday. You can come and get it Tuesday. I show up Tuesday afternoon, waited an hour and a half for someone to come out to talk to me because they were on the phone with the city attorney's office. Then they came out and told me, I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to even issue the permit. So I was told that I could get a permit, then I was told you can't get the permit. I was told you can put up a fence, I was told you can't put up a fence. It's back and forth, all I wanna do is put a fence around my yard. That's all I wanna do.
Mr. City Manager, please
Handle
resolve
it.
that. That seems simple.
Yeah.
Simple thing.
And then he called me.
And then I called you, a few times.
The number of times he tried to get some resolution, some resolve to this issue, I got those calls, and I got just as frustrated as he did in regards to what he was trying to do, and it shouldn't be that difficult.
Well, the first time I spoke to you, you told me, you guaranteed me a call from somebody the next day, and I didn't get it. And the day after that, I didn't get it.
And then you called me again.
And then I called you again,
Yeah.
so.
Mayor,
But you have our attention.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's in the consent.
Will you contact me?
Issues.
I'm just generally aware of the situation. The city code prohibits the fencing in of vacant property. So this gentleman owns 2 lots. One adjoining. So when that prohibition was brought to our attention with your particular situation, one workaround solution that we suggested would be to do a simple unity of title, which combines the 2 lots for purposes of putting up your fence. And if you ever want to sell the property, you certainly can do that, but you can't, the code currently prohibits fencing in vacant piece of property. So we suggested a workaround solution to get the permit
I'm gonna
issued.
tell you that whenever they came out and told me, we're not gonna be able to issue the permit, everything he said after that, I was so angry I couldn't understand what he was
Well,
telling me.
I'd be,
Okay, but I know that there was extra, surveys that had to be done. There was extra stuff that had to be done.
That's a lot of money.
Listen,
I've already
enormous.
spent that money.
Mayor, I'd be happy to look at this further, personally. We were trying to suggest a very basic solution to this problem that he has. I mean, there's a reasonable solution. It's just the prohibition and the code is what it is, and I don't know if the council even wants to address that particular issue in the future by amending the code, but You just can't, under
I will
Cocoa
tell you
zoning
that
code,
the city of Palm Bay,
completely fence in vacant land, otherwise,
the city of Palm Bay allows this. The city of Palm Bay, if you have a house here, and your house is in the middle of the block, but you own the lots on each side of you to the end of the street,
right.
you can fence them all in without having to tie your lots together.
Is there any way we can
If they're
grandfather this
adjoining
issue
I'll,
in?
I'll look, I'll try to get this across the finish line.
Okay.
We're not gonna do that this evening, but we'll try to work out some documentation
And can somebody
would-
please contact me?
would be acceptable to get his permit issued.
will.
It's not that complicated.
Ms. Hamilton will take care of you.
She's the
Yeah,
clerk.
Karen will behind you.
She's the director of the department.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do me a
Good
favor,
job.
keep in contact with Clarence,
Yes,
and he's crafty, he'll figure out something.
okay.
And maybe we should bring back a way to, you won't be the first one. I can tell you that.
And I'm
last
sure I'm
one.
not the first one to have
I'm
this
sure.
problem.
Yeah.
So maybe for the council,
Yeah.
maybe amend the code that adjoining properties
Yeah.
will be exempt from
Yeah.
the vacant lot.
Okay.
Actually, in my
Thank you.
16 years, it is.
Thanks, John.
In my 16 years, it is the first one. And plus, it's also in the consent decree, and there's considerations regarding other properties similarly situated that have sought to do this. That's one of the nuances.
But
It's
they
a
sought to
consent
do-
decree.
There are some properties that have owners that have sought to do this in
Yes.
the consent decree to
Correct.
expand the commercial use of their
Correct.
property, which is prohibited under the
Yes.
consent decree.
Yeah, but his is residential.
It's a residence.
But
Right, I understand that, but there are some nuances to this,
Okay,
so we just can't just blanket,
right.
just ignore the particular rule. Otherwise, we'd have that issue in the consent decree, which we've
But we
vigorously
need to
tried to
handle it.
uphold.
We will. Okay, Barbara Kinsey? God, I can't believe that. You know,
Yeah.
Barbara?
Good evening. Barbara Kinsey, 1628 Manor Drive. We would like to ask the council, why is this zoning change on the agenda before having a hard commitment from the developer on the design and aesthetics and final height of the project? This premature move suggests a poor process. To begin with, why did the city originally ask for proposals that would violate the existing zoning restrictions? Why did this happen in the face of existing zoning, a comprehensive plan, and an approved 2008 waterfront plan and a parking study? Why the city does not seek a project that fits the specifications already in place, that is, the specifications that seek to preserve the city's historic character? Why build projects that do not fit the village? Disregarding the current comprehensive development plan opens the door for similar future violations and makes the city vulnerable to having no plan at all, meaning losing its quaint character and its historic value. The importance of maintaining the historic character of the city was quite clear to the zoning board that voted against this zoning change by a large majority, overwhelmingly, 6 votes to 2. We can have development, sound development, that preserves the beauty of this place. So I urge you, we urge you, to vote against this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
could you just clarify that actually the city did not issue the request for proposal? The Cocoa Community Redevelopment Agency issued the request for the proposal to redevelop. They're two different bodies.
The same people.
Well, actually, it's not. There's there's citizen members on the CRA, and there was an RFP that they did. So,
Okay, here we go. Helm,
Maintain order, Mr.
yeah, hold it down, everybody, please. Helma Mezzi?
Good evening, I'm Helma Mezzi, 2214 Claremont Drive. I I love living in Cocoa, Florida. The reason I live here is because I used to live in New Orleans. And I lived in New Orleans for about 14 years. Work took me up north, and when it was time to come back to warm weather, I didn't want to deal with big city issues of New Orleans, and I landed in Cocoa. I had never even heard of Cocoa, Florida, but I found the house of my dreams in Cocoa. And guess what? It looks just like a house from New Orleans. It's my little New Orleans house on Claremont Drive, built in the 1920s. Looks like it got plucked right out of the French Quarter. So I asked myself, wow, I found this great house. What else am I meant to discover? I've been living here for 7 or 8 years, and I've fallen in love with this area. And what I love about, well, there's many things I love about it, but I love the historical aspect. And that's why I tie in New Orleans, because New Orleans has this feeling. If you've ever been there, if you've ever walked in the French Quarter or historic neighborhoods, there's a human scale. And there are 3 oversight organizations that maintain that scale as far as development goes. So I understand there's a proposal for a hotel here in Cocoa Village, and I'm in favor of that. But I urge you to reconsider the original zoning ordinance to maintain that scale so that you keep the charm and the integrity and the historical context of Cocoa. Thank you.
Thank you. William Morris? Hey, hold down. William Morris. Hey, William.
Hi. Bill Morris, 1908 Manor Drive, Cocoa. First off, I'd like to commend you, Mayor Parrish, for the agenda tonight, and
I chopped
for
it up, messed it up.
apologizing for last meeting, and also to propose this workshop on what goes in that vacant property. But I strongly object and disagree with the idea of deciding tonight whether to rezone it for 8 stories or 5 stories. It's 5 stories right now, you want to redesign it for 8 stories. Why? Because that's the integral part of what happens to that area. It's not because of, well, I'm not in favor of a hotel. I'm not in favor of any building that goes there for 7 or 8 stories. So I strongly urge you to, as part of this workshop, delay the decision tonight to rezone it. Make that a part of your workshop and decide then whether to rezone it or not. Thank you.
Okay. Bill, thank you. Judy McClooney?
The 30-minute limit on delegated.
Judy?
But we have to motion to.
Judy McClooney, 1908 Manor Drive, Cocoa. I just want to talk a little bit about attitude here. It's very important, the mindset that we go into this with. And again, I want to thank Mayor Parrish for the workshop idea, because, you know, when there's too many things that don't seem right, we are all neighbors. We don't want a win-lose situation. We all live here, many of us, for most of our lives, and we just don't want a community where it seems like some win and some lose. I think when that happens, it's sort of like, well, I'll say you're buying a dress. Many of you don't qualify, but if someone says, that's a great dress, but gee, it needs a different waist, it needs a different collar, it needs a different color, you begin to say, there's that many objections. No, it's beautiful on you, dear. Maybe it isn't. maybe we need to put more parts in play to solve this problem. If we rush to a solution, if we rush to approve, let's say, the new zoning to 8 stories, we close the door. Once the appendix is out, you can't put it in again. So it's better to take our time, and it's very important to put more parts in play. One of those parts I just want to speak briefly to, and that is parking. I've already told a number of you that I already park on the old City Hall lot. I do it regularly. My husband and I have independently counted the spaces there. We count 60 with area for another 40, we think. There's 100 spaces. Now I find out that developers charge normally $22,000 a space. That land at that rate, 100 spaces at $22,000 a space, that's a couple $1 million on that land. But I have reservations about putting a parking lot there. For one thing, in the parking study that Coco had, and you can read it, I got a copy. I don't like reading dull things like that, but I did it. And they actually recommend more parking into Zone 1, Area 1 of the city, which is not that area where the old City Hall is. Right. That's Zone 2. So first of all, it's not quite in the area most important to the downtown, to the events places and where people want to park. And us old ladies don't want to walk that far. But anyway.
Judy, I appreciate by law I have to cut you off.
Oh, well, I do want to make one more point.
Yes.
That we cannot guarantee if we have that as part of a business parking, hotel parking, that it will be for the public, employees, guests. We can't be sure that they will be the ones using that space. Let's consider parking separately, in which case the building would not have to be as high. Maybe that's one. I will try to bring it up in the workshop, but let's put more pieces into play, not let's just slam the door, give some the win and some the lose when we all live here. Let's go more slowly.
We hear you.
Thank you, Judy.
Loud and clear, Judy. Very good. Randy and, is it Jane? Joan? Neighbor? Yeah. That's him. Can't read it very well. Good evening.
Hi there. So do you need my address now?
Yes, please state your name and address.
Jennifer Riggs, 1629 North Indian River Drive. And Jane and Randy cannot be here. Jane is sick.
Oh, they can't, they're not here?
No.
And I got another one.
I have a letter for her.
I have a Todd Riggs.
Pardon me?
A Todd Riggs?
That's also, he's in New York.
Okay.
That's my husband.
So you're speaking?
I'm speaking now for Randy and Jane.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay, I will just read you the letter. We are Randy and Jane Naylor, and we live at 413 North Indian River Drive. Thank you for this opportunity to address an issue which is vital to the integrity of our village and its future. We appreciate your work and know that listening to all points of view before making a critical decision is a time-consuming part of your job. However, you have demonstrated that you have the well-being of the whole community at heart, and we are holding you to that tonight. We moved here from Bonita Springs on Florida's west coast 2 years ago. We chose Cocoa Village after a long search. The town we came from was wedged between two cities, Naples to the south and Fort Myers to the north. When we left, our lovely village had been auctioned off to the highest bidder. Without thought to its quirky artistic charm, it became a concrete jungle of high-rise condos and big-box stores. We do not want this for our new home. Jane has a studio in the village, and Randy works from our home on the lagoon. We entertain family and friends and would love to have a good hotel nearby. We have also seen what tall buildings and poor design can do to the feel of a small village. Please consider carefully and wait until we have all of our input.
Great. Thank you very much. Dennis Dolphin? Dennis Dolphin? Okay, we'll go to the next one. Linda Dolphin. Let's left together, maybe, no?
Mr. Mayor, you need to make a motion to extend delegations your past 30 minutes.
Motion to extend delegations.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
For how
Any
how
opposed?
long?
30 minutes.
30 more minutes?
Do you have 30 more minutes?
It's your
for us,
discretion.
Mr. Mayor?
How many more minutes you want? Oh, you want 15?
30 minutes.
Let's, how about if we motion to extend it to the mayor, at the mayor's discretion? It doesn't have to be a certain amount of time, does it?
Yeah.
I would recommend that you start with an increment of time.
Okay, so the motion is to extend it for another 30 minutes.
I'll second that.
Second up here, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, here we go.
Linda Dolphin is traveling, and she and her husband sent letters also. I will read this excerpts from it to help us save time.
Okay.
I love the idea of she said thank you also first. I love the idea of a hotel in downtown Cocoa Village. When I first heard about it, I was really excited. I must admit that the rooftop bar open to the public seemed especially appealing. However, I couldn't disagree more with the CRA's proposal amendment to justify a height increase on 6 parcels of the village. The question she wants to get to is, can we get our needed hotel without destroying the character of Cocoa Village? And the answer is yes, we can. Number one, and she did a detailed study of this, I'll provide the letter so that you can see the analysis. If we get rid of retail, and if we get rid of the city parking, this hotel becomes, if we study the plan, we see that if 2 floors of parking are removed, a 5-story building emerges with 2 floors of parking for the hotel and 3 floors of hotel rooms, 110 parking spaces. The hotel would consist of its, sorry, I'm trying to jump to expedient. Cocoa then has a hotel in the core of the village that would be 5 stories, plus a rooftop bar, all at a height of 47.8 feet, totally conforming to current code while protecting the character of a quaint historic village. And with that, the rooftop bar too. So let me repeat, we can have this 5-story hotel in the village without changing zoning. One more time, we can have this 5-story hotel within zoning. Where about that? Okay. Shall I stay up for Dennis's? He has a different approach.
Well, it's a little bit different. Mr. City Attorney, you don't mind, do you? Is that lawful?
Don't mind what?
She's speaking for different people.
Reading letters from.
They can't be here.
It should be just
I mean, she's,
Yeah,
if
go
she's
ahead.
here representing an individual,
That's yes.
that's fine.
Okay, let's see.
This is from her husband, Dennis Childs. I am an architect and a city planner. I have developed countless projects in countless cities. The reason, and I'm going to excerpt here again too, the reason the village has the appeal that it does is largely because it is made up of a grouping of low-rise buildings. Under 50 feet in height, the upper floors are shrouded by trees and separated by bright sunny streets. The hotel site is part of this historic district and should be kept well below the 68 feet in height. Once you pass a zoning change, zoning classification spells out its restrictions, and the developer is free to build within and up to those limits as set forth by the ordinance, which in this case is 8 stories, which could add up to a maximum height of 104 feet. We must assume that once rezoned, any developer, including this, is free to build up to 104 feet building on this property, the entire block. Is this something we really want for the core of our village, right next to the historic portion of our village? Why is the city seeking a zoning change? I am quite sure that a variance can be granted for only one reason, and that is to relieve a non-self-imposed hardship. An example might be that of an oddly shaped lot, which makes it difficult to build a house. In that case, the owner could be given a building setback variance to ease the hardship. The city cannot grant a variance to Mr. Brown to build his hotel because he doesn't have a hardship. The city's only recourse is this zoning change. For those of us who moved here because we love the character and charm of Cocoa Village, I urge you to vote no on this rezoning amendment. I'm sorry, one more paragraph. My 40-year experience as an architect and city planner tells me that if this rezoning is granted, the city will find it nearly impossible to refuse future developers similar rezoning requests.
Thank you. Okay, George Brown, Junior.
Good evening, folks. I'm George L. Brown, Jr. I live at 555 West King Street on the beautiful west side of Cocoa.
Yes.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say one thing to Mr. Clarence Whipple.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your beautiful prayer that starts our meeting off. I like that.
All right.
And I'd like to see it on the Code Enforcement Board, but that's up to the board, I guess.
All right.
You do a very good job, thank you. I have a question, and the reason the question comes up is because I have customers come into my building and my little business, and we talk about certain things. And the latest one was somebody from West Cocoa was wanting to run for city council. Now, not living in the city proper, can he or she run for council?
Nope.
What does our attorney say?
For city council, for city council members, they need to be domiciled within their district for 1 year prior to qualifying. And then they have to be domiciled in their district for the term of office in which they're elected to serve. With respect to the mayor's position, it's slightly different. The mayor has to reside within, the candidate running for mayor has to reside within the city of Cocoa for 1 year prior to election, and then domiciled during the term of office if they're elected mayor. So those are the residency requirements to qualify to run in a city election.
They have to live in the city of Cocoa, in the limits. Thank you very much. The only other thing I wanted to say, one other thing, I'm Mr. Brown, that's Mr. Brown, and I'd like to see Mr. Brown get his project in our beautiful city. So please consider it and throw all the questions around. Let's see if we can take care of everybody's problems. But boy, that would make a nice, nice building in our downtown area. Thank you very much.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I would like to let everybody know that George has been on the Code Enforcement Board for 35 years, and he's never missed a meeting. He's gotten awards for it, but 35 years, never missed a meeting.
Wow.
And George lives in the city and is eligible to run for city council or mayor.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Not,
Believe me.
wait till I retire, George, before you do that.
We're going to triple your pay. Okay.
Yes.
Teresa Clifton.
Yeah,
60 seconds, Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Clifton, Executive Director of the Central Brevard Humane Society located at 1020 Cox Road in Cocoa, Florida. And I'm here tonight to make sure the community is aware that the Central Brevard Humane Society is fixing to celebrate 66 years of service to the community, which has been created in 1952 by the, at that time, City of Cocoa Mayor and the Circuit Court Judge, and the movers and shakers of that day, which were lumber mills, orange groves, and real estate people. So the animals of the community are very grateful to the City of Cocoa. And for that, for our 7th annual Tuxes and Tails Gala, we invite the community to come out and celebrate with us at the Space Coast Convention Center in Cocoa on Tucker Lane, right off I-95 and 520. And we always give a table in compliments and in remembrance of your predecessors, the leaders who created the Humane Society for the animals to have a safe place. So we have a table, because you all are all near and dear to my heart personally, because I'm a huge animal fan, obviously. Nobody does this job for 15 years without that. And we have some really great people in the city of Cocoa and in our community, which I'd like to point out, Tom and Susie Wasden, who are the host and hostess for the 7th year in a row of this event. Big clap. And thank you guys so much. And regardless of whatever goes on in our community, I know everyone has the community's best interest. And for me personally, I'm very grateful for everyone that allows dogs in the park and that pick up their dog poop and spaying and neutering. So I have invites for y'all. And one last real quick thing, I'd like to give a big shout out. If you have a state of Florida spay neuter tag, the Humane Society for the 3rd time in a row has just received a $25,000 grant to spay or neuter cats. I know you'll love that, for free. So we will be setting that up. So if you know anybody that has a cat, feral or otherwise, that needs to be spayed or neutered, they can call the Humane Society and we will do it for them for free.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Why the laugh?
I'm going to be out of town, however. Yeah.
Oh.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Teresa a question real quick?
Sure, I got a question too.
Date, time, and location.
Of your event.
It's next Saturday, August 25th, from 5:30 to 8:30. We'll have a buffet and a big gala and VIP and dogs and all kinds of stuff going on. And Joel Silverman from Animal Planet is going to be a celebrity guest, and he'll be out there with dogs, talking about dog stuff. And then, of course, our sheriff, Wayne Ivey, will do a live auction for us, and Mike and Mindy from Light Rock will be our MCs.
Yeah, I'm sure she is.
Thank you,
I
Teresa.
agree.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask
John,
Teresa a quick question?
Deborah, come.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Teresa, the city of Cocoa is doing an event on October the 13th. We're hosting our first canine competition for police canines. We would like to invite you and the Humane Society to come out, maybe do a tent and share information about the Humane Society, or maybe everybody out there should be a dog lover, so maybe you might want to bring some dogs out and try and get them adopted. It'll be at Cocoa High School on Saturday the 13th, starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 13th of October.
That would be
I'll make
awesome.
sure Officer Hadaway sends you all some information so that.
We would love that. We would love
Yeah.
that. We believe that responsible pet ownership is important, so thank you for allowing Riverfront Park to be able to have dogs there and the poop bags too, so we do really appreciate it.
Just since we have everybody here, because everybody talks, I love this. Do you remember the cat story real quick about 2 cats get together and,
No.
okay, then,
This is why it's so important,
It's important.
particularly in Cocoa, that people spay and neuter their cats. A female cat ovulates at will. She doesn't have a monthly menstrual cycle. So when she is 3 months of age, any male will do, and older, she can reproduce every other month a litter of up to 8 kittens. Oh my gosh. So,
That's why.
and they're not monogamous here, so sorry, there's no family tree.
but how many years?
Okay, so, I know, this is,
Too much
here's a
detail.
here's a
Okay.
math thing. In 9 years' time, left unchecked, if only 50% of each litter every other month is female, in 9 years, you can create up to 11 million cats. That's why we're offering free spay neuter. Thanks to the
Sold.
tag.
Now, on behalf of the 18,600 humans that live in Cocoa and the 75,000 cats that live here,
Yes,
we're gonna use it, so thank you. All right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you guys very
Yep,
much.
yep.
Thank you.
Great. It's good, Teresa. Only gets better.
1 million cats.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go to the zoning item.
Yes.
We are
Is that it
done
for-
with.
Is that it for delegations?
Yeah, we
Yes.
have cards.
Okay.
So we're gonna go zoning and resume.
Okay, so we're gonna do the zoning.
Yeah. Yes, okay, good. That's good. this will resume at city business number 5. So, all right, after all this.
Can't get it.
Well, while she's setting that up, I can at least read the title of the
Yeah.
ordinance in.
Okay. Yeah.
Ordinance number 06-2018. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Brevard County, Florida, amending Appendix A, Article 11, Section 22 of the Code of the City of Cocoa to allow large-scale commercial mixed-use buildings on certain properties within the Cocoa Waterfront Overlay District, Cocoa Village Subdistrict, is more particularly depicted on Exhibit A attached here too, amending the Cocoa Waterfront Overlay Regulating Plan to allow the same, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, and it's a proposed text change to the city zoning code that's being proposed by the City of Cocoa Redevelopment Agency, and I know Karen has a detailed PowerPoint presentation to go over the particulars.
Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, everyone. And so as Anthony said, that this is a text amendment. This shows you the location of the amendment, and just as a reminder, the boundaries of the amendment are Factory Street to the north, Brevard to the east, Brevard Avenue to the east, Rosa L. Jones Drive to the south, and John Garin Lane to the west, and it's those 6 parcels that are indicated by CL. So whenever we proffer an amendment, we always make sure that it's consistent with our guiding documents. And so we look at our comprehensive plan, and so the policies that are listed here are the ones in which this amendment is consistent with and furthers the goals of the redevelopment area. Then we look at the Redevelopment Agency's Waterfront Master Plan, and that particular slide really speaks to the commitment of the CRA to encourage catalytic mixed-use development. And so as part of the charge of the CRA Waterfront Master Plan, we want to make sure that we have development options to facilitate redevelopment of sites like this, identify potential private, public ventures, and also to establish redevelopment incentives. Of course, our strategic plan. And that speaks to leveraging existing land and properties so that we make sure that whatever vacant or underutilized properties are developed to its highest and fullest extent. Now, currently, that site, those 6 sites allow up to 68 feet. And so when we talk about 68 feet, what does that look like? So that visualization speaks to some of the challenges we may have had in the past in redeveloping this site. When you talk about a smaller footprint, you reduce the ability to reach economies of scale and really get full return on investment. So the larger your footprint, you have a greater availability to have more amenities, whether it be parking, larger apartment units, whatever that underlying use may be. And as you have more developable area, you can also then reduce the cost to the consumer. So that means it's either cheaper rents, cheaper rooms, cheaper office space. So, you know, when you have a larger space, you can do more, and those savings are then carried on to the consumer. Some of you may have seen these visualizations before. You will see a yellow rectangular shape in the background, and if you don't see a rectangular shape, that's good. It shows the proposed site from different angles. So this is Brevard and Oleander, and we're walking towards the site. And you see, it's really not visible because of the trees. We'll keep walking towards the site, the amendment site. We get a little further, we're by the Historical Society. You might see a little bit behind the trees, but it's really well covered. Ah, now you see it, right, because we don't have as much tree canopy. As you get closer, it's more visible.
Karen, that's 68 feet?
That's about 100 feet.
That's-
So that's about 100 feet. That's it from Church. And then that's from Derby and Delanoy. And then we said, you know what, let's look at existing buildings, because right now that 104 feet is along the waterfront area. So let's look at some of those. So you're driving along Indian River Drive. Again. And again, so that's just to give you the scale, okay? And so, you know, we've heard a lot about preserving the historic nature of our downtown, and that's very important. That's what makes Cocoa Village very special. And so we have the regulating plan, which is our overlay plan that guides the urban form. You know, how do we want our buildings to be built? And make sure that it's in keeping with our neighborhood context. And so I apologize that you can't see the detail. This is really a very huge map that doesn't scale very well, but I at least wanted you to get an idea. But I'm going to kind of talk you through. So I had shown this slide earlier. Those are the 6 parcels, the commercial large mixed use. And so we are very sensitive to the fact that we want to preserve this historic, charming context of our downtown. So where those 6 properties are, those 6 sites, that's at the highest point of that area, the Cocoa Village subdistrict. And so those would be the sites that will have the highest use. And then the surrounding areas that buffer, they serve as a buffer, those will be remaining as commercial medium mixed use. And then we radiate out to townhomes and cottages. So those 6 sites will be the highest point within the area, and then we have like a tiered step-down effect, and that preserves what's already there. But then again, it allows for return on investment, economies of scale. So now, this shows 104 feet. So as you see, you have more area. So you could have more retail, you could have public parking, you could have whatever it is, we're able to build more, and then again, the end user, it's more affordable to whoever is either renting, staying, or purchasing. And again, this is independent of whatever is going to be developed there. This is really to incentivize development, to ensure that we get, you know, we're at the cusp of greatness. But let me just go back to this. It's been said previously that downtown Cocoa Village isn't a destination, and it actually is. I looked at the Space Coast Office of Tourism survey. They do surveys that look at the visitors that come and where they go within Brevard County. And so we have a participation rate. Of course, the highest you can get is 100. But, you know, we're right up there. I think Cocoa Beach was slightly higher, and we were before Kennedy Space Center, which is saying something. And if you look at the satisfaction rate, that's on a scale from 1 to 5. And so, you know what, Cocoa Village is a place that people not only come, but they enjoy and they repeat visits. And I think that's important. And so back to what I was about to say, and let me just go back to this image, is we're on the cusp of a lot of catalytic development. We have several residential projects that are going to be happening in the area. We have the waterfront area that's being revisioned. And we also have some projects that had kind of faltered during the recession, and they're coming back, they're dusted off, and they realize. And so we can either be the victims of change and it happens to us, or we can be the architects of change in our future and guide the kind of change that we want to see. And then in terms of an approval timeline, it did go to Planning and Zoning last month. This is the first reading here tonight. We talked about doing a workshop with staff to address the hotel. But in terms of a second reading, depending on direction from council, we could be back as early as September. So thank you, and thank you for your patience, and if there are any questions, I'm
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Nice
It's good.
presentation.
Thanks, Karen.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, well, we got cards.
Aye.
You want to wait?
You
or
wanna
you
do
want to say something?
I just had a couple questions for Karen.
Oh, Karen, yes.
Yeah.
I had a comment.
I just had a couple questions of Karen. Karen, when you were saying that you had gone to the Office of Tourism and gotten their statistics, has that been recently? Because what I'm hearing from some of the businesses in the downtown is that we're suddenly seeing a lot of vacant businesses in the downtown area, and
So I had two slides, I should say two columns. One was spring of 2018 and the other was fall of 2017. And so there should be a fall of 2018 pretty quickly. Well, okay, I'm glad you brought that point up. Yes, there's several things that are happening at once. But in regards to our vacancy, this is why it's very important that we incentivize and that we ready any vacant or underutilized sites for development for fullest and highest use, because we do need to reinvigorate our downtown. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to constantly be of interest and remake ourselves as a destination periodically.
okay. Yeah, I just know I've been hearing lately about vacancies, so. That's it, thank you.
Karen, I'm listening to you in regards to going forward with the new facility that's being proposed. I've lived around this city for 67 years, and I've seen it go from dirt roads to what it is today. The beautiful downtown area, when Oleander Point was built, Whitley Bay, those facilities that you've shown that are high-rises at this time, it did not take away from the city at all. As a matter of fact, it enhanced the ambiance of the city. I believe that going forward with the design that would be acceptable to those that would like to see a new hotel with the amenities that's been described will not hurt or erase the historic factor of downtown Cocoa. We can come together, and go forward in a positive way for all concerned without having what's actually built on the River Road and the adjacent highway across Whitley Bay. I don't think that this city will be as beautiful as it is turning out to be. We have South Cocoa Village. We have North Cocoa Village. We have to the east the river. Beautiful buildings. Let's design this new facility to accommodate the concerns of the citizens as well as keep the new building in line with the facilities that we have that exist today. Thank you for your presentation. I'm all for that new hotel. Appreciate it.
But just as a reminder, this is just about the amendment, so we're not
And
really focusing on the end use.
Yes,
This is just about,
I understand that, but
Thank
I
you,
gotta say what's on my mind.
That was the smartest thing said all night long.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Wow, okay.
And as another reminder, this is just the first reading. We
Yeah, this
have to
is-
go through this again.
Yes.
We're way off.
Yeah.
On anything, so. All right, we're gonna, y'all ready? We're gonna hear some cards, right?
Okay, ready?
All right, Jennifer Kenny. And excuse me for a minute. I should just roll this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Jennifer Kenny, 1917 Quail Ridge Court, apartment 1901 in Cocoa. And actually, I probably should have been called on to speak earlier because, and I'm excited really that y'all are gonna have a city staff workshop, and I'll make sure that I attend that, even if I have to take a day off from work. So I'm very interested in hearing more actually about the height, because 39 feet higher to me seems like a lot. And I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. I'm all about building. I'm in the building business. So my main concern is I've been told that we have actually gifted this property to this developer. Is that true?
We haven't done anything.
Okay, we haven't done anything. Okay, so that
Well,
probably.
Actually, it's not the city council, CRA owns the property. And the CRA's made the application for this amendment. And the CRA has contemplated in the RFP, we'll be looking at a development agreement with the respondent.
As in a gift, a donation, or?
There are some requirements in the RFP
Okay,
that they provide, such as, one of them was public parking.
okay.
And then, so there's a couple other things.
So those are things I'm gonna have to learn more about, and hopefully I will have learned more before the workshop, and I can speak intelligently about that, because I just have this big concern that, I did some research myself on, income and poverty level in our nice little city. So according to the United States Census, Community Facts, and it's backed up by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Quick Facts, 26.8% of the people who live in our city are living in poverty, at or below the poverty line. So for us as a city to give away property, I think that that's a shame. And I would also say that it concerns me that the developer perhaps will not be able to start and finish a project of this magnitude if they have to ask the city to give them something, or the CRA, or whomever that I'm gonna learn more about. So those are, that's actually what I wanted to talk about here today. I have a concern about poverty and building and giving away what the citizens of Cocoa are paying for in their taxes, because even the people living in poverty are paying taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Gerald Blanchard.
Gerald Blanchard, 15 North Indian River Drive. Mr. Mayor, council members.
Sir.
We hear a lot pros and cons of what the council is looking at and thinking to do for our great city of Cocoa Village. I would like everybody to stop and think that it's not just what they think personally. Think of all the people who live here in Cocoa, our neighbors in Rockledge, and our neighbors across the river in Merritt Island. How many of them have friends and relatives that want to come, and they do come here to visit their family and friends, but maybe they don't have the facilities to put them up in their own homes or condos or apartments. So where do those people go? They go to Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral. And where do they spend their money? Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a lovely structure here? I won't say hotel, 10 stories, 5 stories, whatever. But a structure here that family and friends could come and stay in and be in the vicinity of their loved ones and visit the shops in Cocoa Village, go to the playhouse, go to the restaurants, and really bring that people and that money back into our community here. So I really, really hope that council looks at this and takes everything under consideration, but I think the structure would be a magnificent addition to Cocoa Village. Thank you.
Gerald. Thank you. Bill Morris.
Well, I'm doing a double take here. Again, I just reiterate, I really think that we ought to delay a decision on this rezoning until we have the workshop. One thing I think that's really open-ended right now is the occupancy rate. If we make an 8-story building, that means that there's more rooms. Has a marketing study been done on the vacancy rate? How many people would occupy the buildings? That type of thing. A 5-story versus an 8-story, and I think this ought to be decided before we decide whether the size of the hotel. I'm not against a hotel, but I think we ought to have a marketing study to tell us, will we have full occupancy rates for an 8-story or a 7-story hotel? You talk about return on investment. Has that marketing study been done so we can determine the size of the hotel? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Bill, thank you. Good point. Charles Carrington. Charles.
Hi, Charles Carrington, 2106 Indian River Drive, Cocoa. I'm here to speak on behalf of a group of people that are concerned about the height limit issue. I'm not sure that there's a lot of opposition to economic development for the city. I think there are some genuine concerns about the process here, and that maybe we take a pause and look hard at the issue of the height. There are a couple of reasons for that. The first is that other cities in the state of Florida and elsewhere have faced this issue. This is not a new issue. And there are land planners that deal with this very specialized area of planning for a historic area. And some examples are Lauderdale by the Sea, the city of Dunedin, Delray Beach, and those cities decided to stay under 50 feet. So, is anyone here a land planner in this entire room? We all have opinions, including me. You are. All right. Good. We have two in this entire room with many people with opinions, including me. I'm a land use and zoning lawyer with 20-plus years experience. I'm out of my element telling you that 104 feet is too tall. But there are people that are professionals in this area that can tell you. And there must be a reason why cities are keeping their historic areas under 50 feet. So, I would urge you to pause, and as part of this workshop process, to look at what these other cities are doing and not doing. There are existing good and bad outcomes out there. This isn't something we have to experiment on with our own city. So I think that the mayor's comment earlier about a process and the fact that maybe the usual process wasn't followed here is instructive. I think that this information that's out there on height limits can be looked at. Maybe the decision is that should be a 150-foot high hotel, or maybe 80. But I am entirely comfortable with my background in land use and zoning law that an appropriate height limit is ascertainable. It's not a gray area of 50 or 60 feet where we can all just willy-nilly,
Charles, I got to cut you off at some
yeah.
point soon. I know you.
Yeah, and willy-nilly select a height. And that's what the land planner community is for. So I suggest that you look at it in the workshop and not make a decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Emma here?
I don't have an opinion about the height. I came to speak in favor of the hotel, but I do not have an opinion on the agenda item.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Thank you. Here, we'll try this one. This is Nancy Elliott. Boss? Where's the boss? Hey, same thing?
I came to speak to the hotel, however, may I give up my spot to Brad?
Yeah, it's fine.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City
protect you, man.
Council, staff. I could be very brief and get it over with and just say what she said. Karen's presentation was beautiful and spot on. Anyway, I'm here representing the Historic Cocoa Village Association, which is basically a merchants association focused on Cocoa Village exclusively. We have by far the majority of businesses and services in the village are members, so we speak on what the general consensus is our group of nearly 100 participants. A couple of the things the key phrases that Karen mentioned in her speech, historic character, economic prosperity, and invigorate downtown. Those are all great topics. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to talk quickly. The idea of having a workshop, Mr. Mayor, is probably a good idea. Talking to people on the street, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of disinformation. People are just missing and don't know, probably straightening it out a little bit more before we move forward.
30
Makes
years,
sense.
we've never not done that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense to do it. Be good for the community, I think. That being said, the flavor of the village is basically the driving wheel of what attracts people in here. We don't want to mess with the magic.
Right.
Simple as that. However, there is the fact that we have tall buildings at the condos right there at the end in that same district. If you draw come across that latitude line, we would not be moving into the village central. We would be back there to the south of the village, and I don't think that would interrupt the business district of the village, in my opinion. The idea of ruining the view from neighborhoods, I've walked around them, the trees and buildings take it out, just like the graphics showed. There's very little influence of the tall building from what you're going to see in the neighborhoods. And another point that is a big one is if we do go with the flexibility of having the taller buildings and what can go in there, maybe we can really get it right and get it just what the village needs for parking and everything else and do it for the best interest of the community. The idea of promoting it for business purposes is great because the village is a challenging environment and we are all about improving that to the best that we can. That's it.
Good. Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Very good. FYI, Brad is actually he's also our waterfront ambassador. He's putting the waterfront together. He's helping in a big way. Thank you. Walter Roslin. We got it. Okay. Barbara.
Walter Roslin, yes, my husband, he's out of town, so he gave me something to read on his behalf. 1628 Manor Drive. Walter asks, are we, the taxpayers, being asked to accept zoning changes that will alter the village's character and invest public money on a project based on guessing and assumptions? So he basically calls for studies on the matter, like the previous speakers. Since for this project, the tax-paying citizens of Cocoa are being asked to invest millions of dollars of public property, I would respectfully request the council to provide the public with the following information. Are there studies of potential costs, benefits that the citizens of Cocoa may incur because of the proposed zoning change? Also, what market studies have been made on the economic viability of such a large project in the Cocoa Village, or the consequences of this project for existing businesses in the Cocoa Village? If, as city taxpayers, we are to invest our property worth of millions of dollars in exchange for parking spaces and promises for positive outcomes, what evidence do we have that the short and long-term costs of a zoning change will not exceed any benefits of this project. So basically, he's asking for more studies to be conducted about potential costs and benefits, because he's concerned that the costs of constructing large buildings in the village may be quite high. And all the large, I would add that all these large buildings we have around the Cocoa Village, perhaps they would much more enhance the beauty of the village if they were at 68 feet instead of the height that they currently have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Judy McClooney?
We had the same people coming up here.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
What is that?
Okay, Judy McClooney, 1908 Manor Drive, Cocoa. Just talking briefly about, I love to see those tree-lined streets, but I was looking for this building, and I'm sorry, but all I saw was a transparent yellow glimmer in the distance. I didn't see a building. Now, one of the concerns that there might be invisible islands or buildings around here, but I'd like to see this building actually put in as a real model. I am told that architects and city planners actually make models, and I'd like to see that. And then we can't forget that this is a zoning for 6 lots. It's going to be the 2 for the CRA, but the CRA zoning request is for 6 lots. 4 of those are to the south, and they are privately owned. I wish I had one myself. Obviously, they're going to make a lot of money on those to be zoned to 104 feet. Even if the hotel doesn't go that high, I think it's highly likely, if not probable, that there will be high rises in at least some of the other 4 buildings. And so when we think of zoning, this issue is bigger than one project. So I really think there's a need to think of how the whole thing would be, and I don't want to see just all concrete, or if we are going to, we should have a real model of that whole street with those size buildings along it, because it's a distinct possibility. We need to really look and see how that looks and what it would mean for traffic and everything else. So that's more to be done, I think.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks, Judy. Very wise. Lorraine Koss? Lorraine, how you doing?
Lorraine Koss, 2115 North Indian River Drive. And just for the record, because I've been misrepresented in some places, I am for smart growth. I'm for anything that builds our economy, particularly for that 26% of our population living below poverty. I've also always been an advocate for a hotel, no questions, and I understand there's a need for additional parking. This is, this is really hard because I have friends on both sides of this issue that I really respect. And so that makes it really difficult to speak, but I'm against the changing the zoning to large commercial. Successful communities develop by coming together, not by dividing. And we're very divided now. This is being cast as those against a hotel or for a hotel, and that's not what it is at all. It's about the height. And I'm sure that Mr. Brown has done, and I've seen drawings of really beautiful hotels he's done. There's no question in my mind that he would do a good job. The question is, how tall do we want it? And in my mind's eye, 104 feet is just not a village. And neither it is in any of the other historic communities that have historic districts in Florida. It's simply not a village. So whatever is decided here today, of course, we're going to be facing this again. And I applaud you for the workshop. That's a great idea, the public process. That's the way we can bring the community together on it. The only thing is, I want you to reconsider and think of a workshop on the actual zoning, on the actual height, on the actual plan. We should be looking at and adapting that comprehensive plan. I mean, okay, maybe we decide we're not going to be a historic village. Maybe we'll be just a beautiful riverfront community or high-rise community or whatever, but let's not pretend we can be a historic village at 104 feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brent. Lisa Hargreave? Hargreave? I didn't pronounce it right, sorry. We got two more after this. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. I own property at 96 Willard Street in Cocoa, Florida.
Name for the record, name.
Lisa Hogreave.
Hogreave, thank you.
Okay. You got my address?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of my old neighbors because I also used to live on Manor Drive, so I see a lot of my neighbors here. I wanted to speak because I was kind of caught off guard. Somebody just mentioned this to me last week, that they were having this issue about they thought it was a proposed hotel. Now we find out it's just this ordinance change. But I don't know what kind of notice goes out, but I never received any notice. I did receive a notice about a drive-through at the old SunTrust building between 520. So that's one of the concerns. So I think you were right, Henry, about the kind of rushing in here, and a lot of people, kind of came in a panic. Oh no, this is my only opportunity to speak on this issue, and so that's why I'm here tonight. I went to a prior, I don't know what you would call it, maybe it was a workshop for developing the whole park area, and that was a couple of months ago over at the City Hall. No, not the City Hall, sorry, the Civic Center. And I'm not against necessarily a hotel, but there they had a plan for building maybe a civic center way out on the Point riverfront. That would be a lovely spot for a hotel. I don't know why it would need to be in, or any tall building in a spot where is historic. And you're saying that the historic district is really north of that location, but your historic district must be tiny, tiny, because there's still nice historic buildings across from that parking lot. You've got you've got Murdoch's right there also, which is very historic. So I kind of take issue with what you're just considering the historic village, because I consider a lot wider area, and all the taller buildings are on the very outskirts. So
That's true.
thank you very much. And I understand, do you still own that bed and breakfast that's there? I understand there's no occupancy there.
What do you mean?
That you're having to do special events, and really that's all you're doing. You don't have a good occupancy rate there.
Everybody's asking, I'll tell you. We're out of season, so now I'm repairing the building. Okay, I'm repairing it, and we have people there right now. But it's not jam-packed. Whenever the weather changes in this business, in the B&B business, the weather will change in September, October, and it's very busy all the way through till about July 4th. But we have a lot of events we do too. And the events make it really healthy.
So it'd be nice to learn more about all that and have a workshop on it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, thanks, Lisa. Jennifer Riggs?
Mr. Mayor, this is our fourth time coming up.
How we doing on the time limits?
This is the fourth time coming up.
This is the second or third time.
We just got two
This is
more.
the third time.
Are we at?
But the time, we've extended it once.
On public
We need to
hearings,
get-
this is public hearing, we don't have to extend it on public hearing, do we?
Right. Well,
That's right.
you did it for 30 minutes.
Well, that was delegation, this is
Delegations.
public hearing.
Okay, this is the other one. Okay, the public, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me one second. Super Attorney?
Yeah.
Yes, public hearing.
This is public hearing.
Yeah, we can roll on this, okay?
Right.
All right, good. Go ahead.
I'd like to, Jennifer Riggs, and I'd like to show you something wonderful that I found. Mr. Brown developed this hotel, and it is 3 stories tall, and it has 36 rooms. It's in Dunedin. And so this demonstrates that there is economic feasibility for a small hotel that easily, handily fits well within our zoning. It can be done. He presented this in the same months that he presented the other hotels. So here's a 36-room, lovely, beautiful proposal. We don't have to have a zoning change in order to accomplish a hotel. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Tom Wasden? Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Well, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Councilman and Councilwoman, thanks for listening to the people talk. It's important. We've lived in the village since about 15 years now. We bought our property in 1999. And we've watched, like Mr. Whipple, we've watched the village struggle and get better, but it really took off when we had the high-rise condominiums. If you put a limit on those at 45 or 50 feet, the village would not be what it is today. And so we have property in the north end and the south end. Our north end property is 100% occupied, and we get twice the income for the property we do in the south end. We need something to pull the north and south together. And I think this is just what we need, and I'm in favor of it. We have property 630 Brevard just across the street. It probably affects our property more than anybody else. And we have 50 residential commercial units in the village. We live in the village. We live in a high-rise condominium. And so I am in favor of the zoning change. I'm in favor of the city. We love it. We have a home in Cocoa Beach. We have a home in Merritt Island. We love Cocoa Village, and I think this is just what we need. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir. Thanks, Tom. Okay, that was it.
That was it?
That's it.
Who wants to start? Anything?
I'll be happy to start.
Brenda, okay.
I don't mind starting. Okay. As you know, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Whipple, I have not been here as long as Mr. Whipple, who's been here 67 years, but I have been here 43 years.
Yes.
And I was here for the building of 115 Indian River Drive, and the objections to 115 Indian River Drive, which Mr. Greenwood in the audience may well remember, since his family was instrumental in building 115 Indian River Drive, were pretty, yes, was very negative. 115 Indian River Drive was going to ruin Coco's waterfront, take away our historic significance, and we destroyed 3 historic homes in order to build 115 Indian River Drive. I was also here for the building of Oleander Point, and that was also going to ruin Cocoa Village, Whitley Bay, which I sat on the council and approved the height. I will admit it, I approved that ugly Whitley Bay, 17 stories. I voted in favor of that project, and sometimes when I'm sitting on the River Road, trying to get into the village, and I can't see the traffic coming for the building, I'm kind of wishing maybe we had set it back a little further. But when I'm coming across the bridge from Merritt Island and I'm looking at Cocoa Village, I'm extremely proud of the way the village looks because of Oleander Point and Whitley Bay. And I'm also very proud of the fact that we brought residential
Units.
back to the village, because the village was dying, and everybody knows that without a vibrant residential community in an area like Cocoa Village, you're not going to sustain the businesses, especially the restaurants. all of our restaurant owners will tell you that without the residents of Oleander Point and Whitley Bay, they would not survive the year without those residents. Those residents are their customers year-round. I was also involved in the building of, or when Mr. Parrish built his condominium, which is rather short compared to the rest of them.
It's the best one, but go ahead.
And when Mr. Molitor built his condominium, which also got a lot of flack. Not to say that everybody's concerns when those buildings were built were not valid, there were valid concerns. And there are valid concerns about the development of this property. And I love hearing everybody's ideas, but, you know, from what I hear, we're all on the same page. We all want what's best for Cocoa Village. We all would love to see a hotel in Cocoa Village, and nobody wants anything that doesn't fit in the character of the village. And this zoning change doesn't mean there's going to be a 104-foot building on any of those properties. It also doesn't mean that there's ever going to be a hotel on that property. The RDA still has to sit down with Mr. Brown and come to some sort of agreement, and the RDA's requirements may not be anything that Mr. Brown is willing to move forward with. But if we don't continue the process, then there's no possibility of continuing. It's the RDA, which, yes, we do sit on the RDA, but we are not the only members of the RDA. And when we are the RDA, we're a completely different body, and we have to think completely different than we do when we're city council, and that's not always easy. But the RDA is requesting that we make this zoning change so that they can sit down with Mr. Brown and negotiate, and they can have the power that they feel like they need to make the best negotiation for the downtown. I think everybody would agree that this RDA has been in place, what, Mr. City Manager, about 30 years?
April 1981.
Okay. We would not have a Cocoa Village without this RDA.
Yeah, we wouldn't have anything.
And everybody who's ever sat on this board of the RDA, and I sat on it once before, back in the early 2000s, has always been about keeping the historic character of Cocoa Village. We fought for that for 30 years, and that is not going to change because we're looking at a zoning change. It's not going to change anybody's attitude. I don't like the idea of putting a 104-story building on Brevard Avenue any more than anybody else does. I don't necessarily think we need 104 stories. But I also know that the RDA is requesting that if for this project to move forward, that there be some parking for the public. Without a public parking component to this project, Mr. Brown could build 36 feet or 48 feet and do just fine. The extra height is because we're asking for something. In the end, we may decide, hey, we don't need that parking bad enough to put up with this extra height. That'll be up to the RDA to decide at some future point. But we need to keep moving forward to give the RDA the ability to sit down and negotiate and try to come up with a project that everybody would like. What I would like to see is for us to continue tonight to move the process forward, but I would also like to see us not to bring this back for a second reading until after we have our workshop. That's all I got to say.
I'll agree
It's
with that.
crafty. That's good. Wanna say something?
I've done this a long time, Henry, I'm good.
I know that.
I think what she said was well said, and I concur with your sentiments in regards to how we go forward, that the meeting that we'll have to discuss this issue will be done prior to we make final decisions as to what will actually go there. So I applaud the way that you explained it. It was very simple, and I think it's the way that we should go as a council.
I think we're looking at a minimum of 2 more opportunities for public
Yes.
input, the
Yes.
workshop and the second reading. And there's been plenty of times when I voted in favor of something at one public hearing and voted against it at the next because information or things changed in the meantime. And then that's just from the council perspective. And then we have the CRA votes, and there'd be a minimum of 2 meetings there. So we're looking at a minimum of 4 opportunities for public input before any decision is made about this property. That's a minimum of 4 public meetings.
Yeah, plus a lot more information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main.
And I relate this to the Jolie Smith project that we had to, make a decision on. There was a public meeting, and we had a lot of public input. And that helped us make the decision that we came to, the conclusion that we all voted on. So I think that Brenda's suggestion of postponing the second reading until after the workshop, so we can get some public input.
Well, I think also,
It's a great
I was
idea.
also here for the Riverfront Park project, and most of you who haven't been here won't believe this. There was huge opposition to building Riverfront Park.
I heard that.
Because we killed 400 parking spaces when we built Riverfront Park, and a road. We got rid of a road. And it was huge. You can't take away that parking. But you know what? 6 days a week, my car was the only one in that parking lot because I worked at the Porsche house. And I could look out there and see all that concrete, and my car was the only one there. Now I kind of wish we had those 400 parking spaces, but I'm really glad we have Riverfront Park. And
Most important.
but there was a huge opposition to that. But we had a public meeting, and the public had the opportunity to put input. We all got to say, this is what we want, this is what they don't want. Mr. Greenwood got his tile roofs on the little gazebo things. We all got something we wanted out of Riverfront Park. The red tile roofs, you guys can thank Mr. Greenwood for the red tile, because he fought hard to get the red
He did.
tile on all those little buildings down there.
Ju-
So,
Judy's
the fountain, everything that went into that Riverfront Park, from the fountain to the tiles, had public input. And that's why we all love Riverfront Park so much. It was a community put-together park, and so that's.
And without progress, we're stagnant. And without progress, we don't grow, we don't change. So, but again, the public input is extremely important for us to make sure we get it right the first time. So I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah.
Just, you want to say something, Don? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say with Linda and Clarence and what Jerry just said, that, this is gonna be a place where people wanna come to. If we keep turning down developers that wanna build, look at the opposition we got on 524 to build the Flying J, for instance. Then they squawked because Walmart distribution center was coming up. Do you hear anybody squawking now? No, and the traffic, you don't even know they're out there, because people say, are they open? Yeah, they're open, but the traffic is mostly at night when everybody's sleeping. So, if we keep turning people away from the city, we're not gonna have anything. We're gonna be a ghost town. So we gotta keep our, we got a new developer, what do you call it, Scott's place there? A new building department, right?
The building division?
Yeah, building division, so they get their permits and all that. But if we don't let the businesses come in and do their job and put businesses in here, whether you're putting them on 524, 520 is developed now. We got 2 new dealers going in there. They're already in there, Toyota and Nissan. Then we got the Kia dealer coming down the street. It's all developing. So you gotta learn to work with the public and do what's best for the city and keep our taxes down by having commercial property come in. It keeps our taxes down. And I agree with them. Thank you.
Man, Don, that's good.
I haven't heard you talk that much in a long time, Don.
Just before we get moving here, thinking back to the Riverside Landing project, it was a 45-foot height ceiling, and I came back to council at the time and asked for 20 feet and got 65, and it looks, and then the building next door to me, which is the Don Molitor building, it's like 100 or 110, and they had unlimited height. So, I didn't feel like I got treated very fair in the old days, but I wasn't real mad about it.
You had to beg for 20 feet, and he could have built as high as he wanted.
Yeah, I had to beg for 20 feet and got it. But the funny part was, when we went and designed up Riverside, it was a big, big risk, sort of like what we're doing today. I remember thinking, okay, make the interiors really big and nice and build the building well, but I didn't know where we were in the market, So here we are. We got 12 feet of elevation from the river up to where that site is, the 603 Brevard. So my building there is really 77 feet, right? In a perfect world, I mean, I'm not really for anything over like 85 feet. I realize what we're doing here, but we are, I believe, touching the sky here on this, and it does bother me. Design is everything on this building, how it's gonna look. And, but at the end of the day, I can't stop progress. I certainly don't know everything. I found out that in the last 5 years, 6 years. But the point is, we have to take a stand at some point. We look at Cocoa Beach where they went completely the other way, and Cocoa Beach is hurting in a lot of ways. So I'm willing to take a risk. Maybe in the second reading, we can modify the height. If the public input comes back and says we compromise at 80 or 85.
Well, like I said, I think
So-
if we have the workshop between now and the second
Yeah,
reading,
yeah.
that gives us an opportunity to make
Yeah.
any.
And I hate pushing this along, but we didn't do anything. Everything in the city we've ever done, we've always had workshops or extra meetings, and that's probably one reason why the last meeting flew out of hand, and I take responsibility for it. So
Well, I think
I don't want to do that this
we
time.
did have a couple of meetings where we were talking about annexation, where we had public meetings, and the poor city manager got like food thrown at him during those meetings.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so,
That's right.
So, you know, I could see John's desire to avoid public meetings on some of these
Actually,
controversial issues.
Just so
No,
the
John,
council understands, going back to the CRA meeting, when the project was set forth, staff had recommended that the developer hold a meeting for the sole purpose of whether or not there was appetite for height within the CRA. And actually, probably the city needs to go back to the CRA, because, you know, some of the requests that have come out this evening, I can tell you the staff does not have just the technological resources or the capacity to fulfill that, and they may need to engage the services of a consultant, facilitate, and then come up with some of the, you know, the more cutting-edge stuff that we're talking about in terms of trying to see. I mean, I understand what the one lady said. You see, you know, yes, you pick yellow, and it's kind of hard to see, but if it was a building put in there in greater context, that was one of the things that staff had requested at the CRA meeting, and then the developer held a meeting. So, I mean, this has followed actually the normal process for a planning and zoning amendment.
Yeah, but you're right, it was a developer
Yeah,
meeting and
that's correct.
as opposed to a city meeting,
correct.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have somebody else speak.
Okay.
Okay, I got another card, so is that okay? All right, Jack Brown. No, Jack.
Jack.
He can tell. Hey, Jack.
Hey. Jack Brown, 9889 Bainbridge Drive, Chagrin Falls, Ohio. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I had to address this issue. First of all, I want you guys to know that this is my anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
It's 1 year this month that I started coming to this place. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
The young lady brought this up. I wanted to explain it. It is a 36-unit hotel. It's not in the city of Dunedin per se. It's on the causeway going out to the islands, Honeymoon Island, all that. And we had this site that a friend of mine owned, and it's only 0.6 of an acre, and we could only get 36 units on it because they only allow 4 stories. And we had to park underneath of it, so you could only really have 3 stories, and we wanted to have a rooftop lounge on it because it is going out to the causeway. And we tried to buy the ground that was adjacent to this site so we could get an additional 0.7 of an acre, which would allow us to put 93 rooms on the 2 sites together. We couldn't get the other site, so we had to give up this site, so we didn't build anything at all. So you had to remember that too.
All right, hey, Jack, quick question. Jack, quick question. Don't answer it unless you know, okay?
Okay.
Do you have to have 110?
No. What's my idea? I never asked for 110.
Can you do it in 75 or 80?
Yeah.
I think that's what the original.
I think the
proposal was,
maximum we
78.
ever asked for was 88.
88, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not hard to get along with. You just asked me.
88.
You wanna do it at 88?
It's too bad, you know, I would like to applaud you guys. The best thing you're doing is having this open shop, so people can come and say what the hell they want to say about this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things I could address that were wrong tonight. You know, there are studies done, there's all kinds of things that are done. You can't figure out what to build there until you figure out what you're going to build. You can't go get a franchise, you can't get financing, you can't get the study done. There's all these things will answer all these questions you guys had tonight.
Just remember, height and then architecture is big, 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 okay, you know.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Good, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you.
You wanna craft something?
Like I said, I'd rather just move forward and then
Yeah.
Go, yeah.
address changes
agree.
after our workshop, because
Okay, all right, good.
I agree.
I think we
we're getting
need
hung
the
up here.
additional information
Yeah.
that we would get at a workshop in order to,
Okay.
Right.
yep.
like you said earlier, like zero in on something. Yeah, I need that workshop in order to zero in.
Okay,
Okay,
Okay.
let's do that.
All right, so, action.
yeah,
You wanna make it, I'll be happy to make it.
I'll make it. I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Did, excuse me, did Karen, do we have everybody's information so we can notify of a
Yeah,
public meeting?
did we pass around the list that I mentioned at the beginning for people to sign up?
For what?
I asked that they pass around a piece of paper.
That can wait.
Yeah, I know, but this way, we got a crowd right here, we could make sure that they're
They're not gonna
contacted.
wait.
They'll be there,
They gon' yeah, they'll be there. If we-
Yeah, they'll be there.
trust me.
Yeah,
They'll be there.
I asked at the beginning of the thing, is pass around a piece of paper.
They'll be
All right.
there, John. I think it'll be all right. I'm sure
Okay.
it'll be okay.
Hey, let's take 5 minutes.
Okay.
Make it 7?
Let's take 5 minutes.
All right. You had to announce that. Yeah. Go ahead.
There's 2 hearings, they approved the first one.
First hearing.
Everybody, we're taking a 5-minute break.
Dad left?
I think so, I think.
What you do, throw everybody out?
Yeah, what the heck. All right, so.
Let's move.
All right, so we did all that. It's a little confusing right now, so we got.
Now you're on actual number 1.
Yeah,
Public hearings number 1?
No, public hearings.
Public hearings number
Yes,
5.
public hearings number 1. Thank you, Councilwoman Warner.
What about,
Public hearing number
Well, we did the.
city
you-
business 5 and 6?
You did, well, you've already, okay, actually, let me stand back.
I
Go
know.
Back to city business number 5.
Oh, yeah.
City
Five.
business number 5.
Okay,
need
city
five.
business number
City
5,
business
okay.
number 5, yes.
Then we're gonna roll into multis.
Multi-year,
We're gonna go
And
back
then
over
you'll-
those, I guess, after
yes.
we do city business.
city business number
We'll hit
5.
Yeah, so we're gonna go,
It's the
City-
resolution
city
amending
business
the
5.
FY18 budget.
okay.
Okay, we're on item 18-317. This is a request to approve a resolution amending the fiscal year 2018 budget, partly through the use of general fund reserves and contingency to reclassify expenditures and other unexpected expenses that resulted in negative account balances. So during fiscal year 2018 budget process, estimates are used to develop the budget, and then during the year, other changes occur. So staff is requesting that council approve transfers between each division's personnel and operating accounts affecting general fund, water and sewer fund, and the stormwater fund, because additional funds are needed from both contingency and reserves to clean up the line items. Staff is available to answer questions.
Could I just add to that? There's also 2 items in there where the general fund will be taking over the costs for the claw truck and the forklift that are being used by the general fund, and in addition with the stormwaters, but it's, general fund that is the primary. Sorry.
I make a,
Just want to
okay, I make a motion to accept. I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good.
Now we're gonna go to 7, right?
Nope, 6.
6.
Number 6. Yeah.
Well, I circled it for some reason. Okay,
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is Roman numeral number 6, city business, item number 6, in case people are following along or attempting to. To approve amendment number 6, change order number 2 to PO 71534 with CDM Smith to provide additional project support required for the biological nutrient removal BNR project WS 1222. Authorize the city manager to execute the amendment. To approve a resolution amending the FY18 budget to transfer funds from Stone Street Corridor Streetscaping, project number WS18SS, to the BNR project WS 1222. To approve a resolution to modify the previously adopted resolution 2013-083 to adjust the total project amount. So it needs a little bit of an explanation. This particular project is one of the 2 projects in which Brandy's Design Build has defaulted. Unfortunately, we still have some technical work that needs to be done, even though we are still in dispute and are working with the bonding company who has bonded the project. We have had to hire a coatings expert to kind of review the work. They basically coated the inside of some of the basins at the wastewater plant. That coating is peeled off. There's been some discussion and some pushback from the bonding company. But we've hired a consultant through CDM Smith, by the way, so the majority of this change order is really to have Consulex, who has an office here in Cocoa, right on US 1, to do the expert coding consulting for us. And in keeping with that, we have to continue to pay the consultants, even though we have to see this through. I've had multiple discussions with Greg Johnson, with Anthony Garganesi's office. In fact, it's almost a weekly conference call with him on advising us our steps. But we've advised and already notified the bonding company that we are seeking all of this money. They have refused to pay, but the project still has to be completed. I can't leave the project in limbo. I need to get the wastewater plant back fully operational. So we need this money. Unfortunately, this is probably only one or two projects, I think, since we've actually started the program. $96+ million spent where we've actually had to come back to council to ask for additional monies over, above, and beyond what we originally approved. And that's the reason why we need to amend the total project budget. We've basically turned and used the dollars in contingency to pay to get us to this far, and this next level will put us over. In addition, if you looked at the agenda item really closely, there's a couple $100,000 in contingency, which we're asking you to delegate that authority again to John for his approval in the future. And what's going on is some of the concrete preparation that was supposed to have been done when they did the original painting of and coating of the basins was not done. When we come back and make them take that coating off, that's at their expense, but if the concrete is found to be substandard, that's still sort of the city's responsibility, and that is kind of what that contingency is for. So we have 3 or 4 more basins that have to be brought offline, stripped down, and if that concrete comes off more than what's supposed to, then that's our cost, would not be disputed. But the cost for the consultant to help us and to verify that it's being done right, that it's being prepped right, and that it's being installed right the second time, that would be the cost that we would continue to go after this contractor and/or his bonding agent for. So this is about as ugly as it gets. But we've been, like I said, consulting with our legal team to guide us on how to go forward. We have documentation for everything, and I'm here to answer any of your more detailed questions if you would have them.
Mr. Ruppel? Yes, one thing that I've noticed here in your request is that you're going to transfer funds from the Stone Street corridor streetscaping. Why is that?
I believe that project is not going forward this year, correct?
Well,
It's going forward. They're working on Stone Street now.
but the utilities portion,
I know that the utilities portion was not as invasive as far as the street tearing up the roadway and putting new pipes down. But we need every penny we can get to complete that project. And I don't know how much money you're gonna be taking from
yeah,
this.
it's just, so the monies that were originally budgeted in that account was under the original proposal, if you recall, and that there was also more monies budgeted in stormwater. And then when the project, went out to bid and it came back, the costs were like way higher than could be justified for utilities, specifically because of the life of the pipe. Otherwise, they would not have needed to replace the pipe. And if you did the cost-benefit analysis in terms of for the life of the pipe, it's sufficient. So therefore, they cannot expend any funds towards that project. And that project is proceeding forward without utilities, meaning as the water system, expending any funds on that project. It's really happening with the general fund and to a certain degree, some of stormwater.
Well, I still don't understand why you're taking monies from that project, even though we are not spending it on the underground piping that doesn't need to be replaced at this time. Is there anywhere else that you can get those funds from?
You can't expend utilities funds on general fund projects. They would only, they earmarked or we appropriated those funds with the original intent of replacing the pipes.
How much money we're talking about?
It could be even $10, but you'd be spending.
If it's $10, okay.
No, but I'm saying, but it could be as low as $10, and you still wouldn't be able to do it because it's the ratepayers and it's the utilities funds, and the general fund already receives the return on investment for it, the utility system. So you cannot use utilities funds to pay for a general fund expense. So that.
So you're saying that the monies that was budgeted to do the underground piping that's not going to be done can't be spent on anything else but
utilities.
Utilities.
Correct.
Because it's
That's what you're
utilities
saying,
fundings, yes, sir.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
I have the explanation, but it just seems as though, we don't have any money in the first place for that project. And there's a lot to be done on that street. And it's ironic to me that we can't just designate that monies or donate it. But if the law says we can't do it, it's illegal.
Supersedes it.
Yeah, but, I'm okay with that, but I'm really not okay with it. because we need that money for that project.
The project's fully funded as, is what was approved by city council in terms of by the revised construction that is currently going on. It is funded, and I think,
Yeah.
Ed, you can advise that it's on schedule to be completed by, we're still, I know contract December, but actually we're working with them to get it done by the end of this fiscal year.
Yes, we expect it to be done by September 30th.
Okay, as long as you don't run out of money, we're good.
No, no,
No, it's fully
the
funded.
project as revised
If you
was
do,
completely funded.
we're gonna have a new ordinance.
Spent it all on Jolie Center.
How optimistic are we?
Spent it all on Jolie
Yes.
Center.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
How optimistic are we on recovering any of the money from the previous contractor?
Right now, we're just still in negotiations. In other words, we've made demands, so
But it's not like they've gone bankrupt or.
they have.
They have gone bankrupt.
They have gone bankrupt, yes. And so the bonding agent has stepped in to date, and we are, I think it's Westfield on this one, is the company who put up the surety bond as required by, you know,
Yeah.
for our capital projects. But dealing with them is difficult, and of course, they don't want to ever pay, you know, their job is to minimize their expense. And there are a lot of expenses and a lot of substandard work on this particular project that has to be corrected.
Had we
And
ever
so-
used them before, or was that the first time?
No, we had actually done multiple projects with Brandy's. They did a couple of projects at the water plant, and they had done one, I think that was one project at the sewer plant. If you remember, they did the high-speed service room pump repair. That was the first project they did when we had that structural issue. They did the pump replacements for Wee Wahootie when we did the Wee Wahootie upgrade, which is the pumping station that's out in the well field. They did,
So they had a good track record.
and they also did, they were in the midst of doing the covers over the basins, you know, the covered walkways and some of the other work that we had done, and that's right when they went bankrupt. We were down to almost the very last punch list items on that, so that one cleared. They had the industrial park is actually the second project that's in default, and it's a different bonding company, so I have two different bonding companies that we're dealing with. And I'm also working again with Greg Johnson out of Anthony's office. That one's in a little bit different position. They were, again, almost down to punch list items. And we're trying to negotiate a settlement because one of the subcontractors who built the actual, the concrete tank never got paid about $400,000. So he won't give us a warranty on the tank. And so we're negotiating, trying to get our warranty, try to satisfy that contractor, and trying to work with them on that other one. And that's actually going a little bit better in terms of negotiations. But this one has been a battle about whether this stuff was installed right, whether the material was defective, and so on and so on. So that's why we needed to get some coding experts to talk about how it was installed, and then how is it removed, make sure they're not damaging anything beyond what they should in terms of taking it off, and then making some very technical recommendations about the existing concrete, how much more work would we do? In other words, we have to recognize that there may have been some work, even though they won't admit it, but there's, it was in their contract to do prep work on that concrete. They didn't properly prepare that, in our opinion, and therefore that's why the coating has failed.
Sure, if they'd done that, you wouldn't have
Right.
the problem you have.
So now we're taking it off, but in the
Yeah.
process of taking off, a certain amount of concrete has to come off to get the coating off.
Yeah.
And now, if there's additional that needs to come off because we think it's not strong enough to hold the coating, then that would be on us. And that's why I have that Consolex as a subcontractor to CDM Smith, giving us that advice. They're on site every moment that they are there. In fact, there's multiple people there observing everything that's going on to protect our interests in this.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Two, we get number 7. That's, Ed.
That's me. Item 7, multi-year contract. We request council authorization to award a multi-year agreement for shoreline stabilization project under the continuing service agreement for marine construction services. Make this award to TSI Disaster Recovery LLC in the amount of $590,390 for alternate number 1. That's to complete the Lee Winter Park Shoreline Stabilization Full Restoration Project. We're requesting approval of a task order to Shoreline Stabilization LLC in the amount of $590,390 $390. Approve a budget resolution to amend the FY18 budget to move funds from general fund balance reserves 001-3580-519-6300 under project ES17HI. We're also requesting approval of a change order resolution to authorize city manager to approve change orders not to exceed the 10% or $59,039 of the contract award. This is for shoreline stabilization at Lee Winter Park that was disrupted during Hurricane Irma. We bid two options. Option one was an upgrade to prevent future damage, and option two was to put it back the way it was. Obviously, you put it back the way it was, you stand a chance of another hurricane disrupting it. And both options can be refunded through FEMA. The city's share on the base is 12.5%. The city's share of the upgrade, so to speak, is 25%. So it's our hope that we would get quite a bit of this refunded through FEMA, maybe in the next decade or so. Hopefully not
Sad,
that
isn't it?
long.
Bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
Any questions?
No question, motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Chief of Police.
All right, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. I ask council to approve a multi-year contract between the School Board of Brevard County and the City of Cocoa for renewal of its school resource officer and the addition of a second school resource officer for the 2018-19 school year, July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, and authorize the city manager and city attorney to finalize and execute the contract with the school board. Just a little clarification. These are the two full-time school resource officers. One is at Cocoa High, the other is at Endeavor Elementary. Also, as a part of this contract, we are providing a SRO special detail for Clear Lake Education Center and for Cambridge until the school board is able to get their armed security specialists in place.
And just to add to that, Mr. Mayor, is that the special detail rate is $35. Currently, you have a special events ordinance which has a special detail rate of $40 for a nonprofit. The school board is only authorizing or saying that they're going to be able to reimburse us $35. So, I mean, that covers costs, generally speaking, of the employee, not any of the materials or equipment. And then, however, it does clarify that for any non-SRO special detail, they would be responsible for the normal not-for-profit rate.
Which is what, 35?
40.
$40.
Yeah.
And we getting reimbursed by the school board for any of this?
For any SRO detail, we are getting reimbursed for the school board at $35 rate, the officer to receive $30. We're being reimbursed $52 per SRO that we're providing. During the budget presentation, we estimated it was about $73,000 and change, or $147,000 total for the two, and we'll be reimbursed $102,000 for those two.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion to accept.
Isn't this a public hearing?
No.
No,
No?
multi-year contract.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Why is it showing up as?
That was $52,000 a year, not $52 a year, sorry.
It's under multi-year contract.
Oh, okay.
Public hearing.
I'm down one.
Chief
okay.
was over there like,
Brandon, number 8.
I'll second that
Yeah,
motion.
I'm down one, never mind.
I second it.
Okay, motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
See you next Tuesday.
He's got a phone call. Okay, so, Chief?
The next one is to approve a multi-year contract between Emma Jewell Charter Academy and the City of Cocoa to provide an SRO special detail beginning on August 10th, 2018, and continuing until such time that they have an armed security specialist trained and in place, and authorize the city manager and city attorney to finalize and execute the contract with Emma Jewell Charter Academy. This is kind of the same thing. We're providing this SRO special detail to Emma Jewell, Emma Jewel will be sending somebody on their staff to go through the armed security school that the county's putting on. Once that person is trained and back, then we will discontinue the special detail.
They weren't providing them the same
Same rate.
offer that, to 35. And then the other thing I should add and compliment, thank the chief, is his department has been working with them and Jewel as they have to, obviously, they don't have the same resources the school board, the school district does, but to evaluate the security needs and plans for the school. We've offered those services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Chief, are you having any trouble filling these special details?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Are you filling those positions at the school?
Yeah, we've filled the two, Cocoa High and Endeavor for this year. And like I said, they're gonna put, the school board will put the specialists at Cambridge and Clear Lake Education Center for now.
Thank you.
I don't quite understand that.
Yeah.
No, we got a public hearing.
That was just.
I don't understand why the school board doesn't foot the whole bill, but
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
They should they should flip the whole bill. It makes it very confusing and expensive.
Well, it
You know.
also isn't fair to the public.
It's
Who
not
pays
because
taxes?
They're paying taxes on property and
Mhm.
all, right.
And they have a better taxing ability than we do.
They do. I look at this as a short.
And they won't be affected by
fix.
Amendment 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna get our money taken away, but they don't, so yeah, that's,
Yeah.
well.
Okay, we're gonna go to public hearing, number 1.
Okay, public hearing, item number 1, ordinance number 07-2018, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Brevard County, Florida, amending section 2-51 of the city code to provide that regular council meetings shall be held on every second and fourth Wednesday of each and every month, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is second and final reading of this item, also a public hearing. The only slight little change to this ordinance was the effective date. We modified section 6 of this draft ordinance, that if the council were inclined to approve it, the meetings on Wednesdays would start beginning in October of this year.
Okay.
So you're saying October 10th would be the first meeting?
Be the second Wednesday of October.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let me make a motion to accept it.
Public hearing.
We gotta open
Oh, public hearing, yeah.
I got a question.
That's okay. Yes.
When we cancel the holiday meetings, we canceled the one prior to Thanksgiving, correct? So we wouldn't have to do any adjustments with this one. And how about Christmas? Did we do anything with Christmas?
The second, that's canceled also. There's just.
That's on a
first meeting.
Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month.
Right.
So
the-
did we cancel that also?
Yeah, it's already
Okay,
been canceled.
that's, I just want to make sure we're covered.
Yeah,
Okay, I make a motion to accept.
Public hearing.
But we got a public
Open
hearing.
it up to the public.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We should have a telephone for people to call in.
Yeah, okay.
On the other
Don't
hand,
need
Okay,
I'm gonna close it to
I don't think
council.
so.
Anybody
all right.
out
okay.
here would like to speak on this ordinance, number 1?
Getting tired. Sorry
No,
about that.
Dave? No. Okay. Close it to the audience, bring it back, take action.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Wednesday it is.
Wednesday it is. Great.
All right.
That's gonna be hard to get used to.
Hump day.
I know.
Super attorney,
I know.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do Tuesdays? Go
gonna
play
be good.
bingo.
Show up on
It's
the
gonna be
second
good.
Tuesday of the month and go, where is it?
I know.
It's gonna happen.
You're gonna have to go play bingo on Tuesday.
There you go. Okay, next public hearing item, ordinance 05-2018, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Brevard County, Florida, amending Appendix A, Article 10, Section 3 of the Code of the City of Cocoa to modify the requirements to allow construction of single-family dwellings and customary accessory buildings on non-conforming lot of record, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is second and final reading of this ordinance. There have not been any changes to this ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
No. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna close it to council, open it to the public. Anybody out there want to talk on this ordinance? Nope, nope, nope. Yeah, he left, okay. Okay, we'll close it to the audience, bring it back to council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, number 3.
Weston, for city council consideration and public comment on the allocation of the 2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $24,879. And this year, we'll again be using it to purchase additional laptop computers for patrol.
All right.
Good.
We'll open it up to the audience. Anybody like to speak on this? Yeah. This grant? No? Yeah, I think the guy in the control room wants to. No? Okay. Just joking.
It's laptops, why do you think he's got thumbs
Yeah.
up?
He's back there jumping up and
IT.
down.
Hey, it's
This is
late. and
computers.
We're having fun.
We're almost done.
Okay, very good. We'll close it to the public, bring it back to council, take action.
Motion to approve.
Motion to.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. See, if we would've done this earlier when everybody was here, there'd be people talking about it and everything. You know that.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Okay, so we're off the agenda. We're gonna go to reports. Anybody from advisory board or a committee you'd like to speak out there? No? Dave, you're working on it, right? Okay, he's working on it. All right, so we'll go to city administration. Always start with Ed.
No report, sir.
Whoa, okay. Any questions for Ed, anybody?
Ed, did you get that email I sent you today regarding Horseshoe Lake?
I've not seen it
You haven't
yet.
seen it yet? Okay. Yeah, I copied you on, resident reached out to me. Thank you.
Okay. I had a question
I'd
for Ed.
just like to thank the council for the support for the bond issue this evening.
All right.
It's big numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, real big.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Chief?
No report tonight.
Whoa.
I don't need them.
Okay. Chief?
No report, Mayor.
John? You know, you can promote them, bring them down the road. and it's still that Tiger fan.
I'm telling you.
Not cool.
Doesn't he have kindergarten tomorrow?
All right.
I'm surrounded over here.
Yeah, you're surrounded.
Oh, that's right.
Go Yankees.
I get it now.
No report.
Jack?
No report tonight, sir.
Good. Thank you. Tammy?
No report.
Carrie, you want to say anything?
No report.
Harry,
Okay.
Harry, you don't say anything?
Okay, good. Super Attorney?
No, I'm gonna keep it going, no report.
Tom Brady in shape? Is he ready to play?
You will be.
Yeah, okay.
Right now, we're focusing on the Red Sox.
Yeah, that's right, okay.
They're pulling away from that other team.
Yeah, good. Assistant City Manager Matt?
No report.
Oh, I need to.
What? That's not good. Okay. Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, each of you are receiving a copy. This is my memorandum regarding the complaint and the petition that was filed by Reverend Dennis. Obviously, it was something that, there were some charges that were alleged with regard to one of our employees. And this is, you received the email, and there's actually, in the backup, there is emails to the effect of all that, the interchange, the exchange of information, or the exchange and request for additional information. I will reach out to Reverend Dennis, although I did advise him in my August 3rd email that I was nearly complete and I would look forward to meeting with him. And his response was, you can see it, that he felt the meeting was unproductive. But essentially, I know each of you have received the petition, and I'll be more than glad to go over this individually with you. But the one item that's coming out of this of the concerns that was expressed when both Matt and I met with him was that, the issue of the Citizen Review Board. And as you recall, in February of 17, Reverend Dennis did appear before council requesting it, and then appeared about 6 more times. But prior to that, the strategic plan had identified creating a community relations council in the medium term, which was 2 to 3, and it was adopted in 16. And then we worked with CPSM, and we said we asked them to evaluate the issue, and they did. We had the workshop in June. Included in the study was, there was really 2 alternatives. I think their main recommendation was a kind of informal group made up of community stakeholders, and then they did expound that group would be advisory in nature, and alternatively, they proffered a more formal advisory committee, if it was so desired, based on, what you wanted to do. I know the city attorney, the chief of police, the assistant city manager, myself, have researched various models and powers and functions of the citizen oversight committees, and we intend on presenting an agenda item to receive direction from city council at the first meeting in September. But with regards to because I know you all saw the petition that went out there, based on the results of the report, I would submit to the council, the allegations against the chief are unfounded and largely based on hearsay. And I understand the petition calls for the chiefs to resign, or that I be instructed to fire the chief. And I just be very honest, it's unfortunate that Reverend Dennis, who has spoke highly and favorably in the last year on 3 different occasions about the performance of the Cocoa Police Department and Chief Cantaloupe, has now resorted to calling for his resignation, firing, or on the hearsay of a few. Respectfully, not only would I not fire or request his resignation, I would not accept Chief Cantaloupe's resignation of his own accord if it were related to the specious allegations of the petition filed with you on July 13, 2008. With the exception of one matter, that an inquiry has been opened based on additional information that was provided post the citizen complaint, and as a part of a meeting that I had with one citizen, Ms. Lennar. I consider this matter closed, and that these allegations, are not, meritorious.
I'd like to ask a question, if I may, John.
Yes, sir.
Did he stand in front of the city council earlier this year and praise Chief Cantaloupe on the great job he was doing?
He said that 3 times, Councilman Bover, and I, myself, in the meeting with Matt, and him and Mr. Foster, and you even having Mr. Foster's email in there about him not wanting to take part of any removal of the police chief. His comment was, well, I was referring to how well he's doing with the zero tolerance on drugs. I've reviewed all the minutes for the past year and looked at the tapes, and that was not the case. There was nothing related to that.
No, he was praising the good job that Chief Cantaloupe was doing in general. Am I correct?
So, yes, that is correct. So it is very detailed. I can tell you personally, probably notwithstanding with the chief and others, but 100 to 120 hours easily into this.
You want our back? Thank you, John.
So the other item I have for you, and again, I will, meet with Reverend Dennis and offer him a copy of this and advise him that in September we'll bring an agenda item for direction. So just want to advise you one thing. We got our official population estimate report in for the current year, and our population as of 4/1/2018, the estimated by the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research was 19,286. So to provide some context, if you recall, it is. Well, we've been at a record for a while, but since 2010, the city has grown by 12.5%, and since 2000, 17.5%. And for those that served on council, I know Councilman Warner was here back in 2002 when the census came out, and
Thanks, Brenda.
and it was 16,412, and we'd lost 7.4% of our population between 1990 and 2000, and we've since gained that back and have well have exceeded it. So I think it's some good news, and I think we've shared with you, obviously, once you hit that 20,000 mark, it changes, I think, your revenue sharing numbers with the state. So the last item, just a reminder, you know, the League of Cities Conference is this week. I'm not attending the whole conference, but I will be going down.
You're going down for Thursdays?
I'm going down in advance of it, but yes, I'll be there for Thursday's Legislative Policy Committee meeting. I'll be leaving Wednesday, tomorrow.
Great. Anything else?
I just want to thank council. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Mr. Whipple?
City Hall Selfie Day tomorrow.
Oh, gosh. that's-
And there's a big decal out front.
We should have mentioned it while all those people were here. Yeah. City Hall Selfie Day,
Maybe for the hotel.
8 o'clock in the morning.
It's 8 in the morning, huh?
8 a.m.
You gotta come to that.
If you can't be here at 8 a.m., please come by and get a picture and post it.
Yeah.
I can't be
on
here
City Hall.
tomorrow for that, but I've already sent my selfie in to Sam. She's gonna post it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that. But anyway, just a couple of items. One, question about the seating in here. I know that there is a seating capacity, as far as the, fire department chief is concerned. We can't fill the chamber with more than what's legal. Do you know what's legal?
It's actually posted on the sign out there.
And if you don't know what's legal, it's okay, but we had a lot of people in here standing up tonight, and I'd like for us to take a look at the seating, and if we need to have some seats ordered for occasions such as tonight, without going over the legal limit of having folks to have enough seating, I'd like to see us take a look at that.
Maybe
It's a
some
problem.
folding chairs we can drag in a hurry or something.
Of some chairs from somewhere, without going over the limit for capacity of this room. Can we get something done about that and get back with this, Mr. City Manager?
Councilman Whipple?
Yes.
We did anticipate a larger than normal crowd for tonight, and we did activate the speakers in the lobby area. Our audio is projected into the lobby, and then we also have the displays out there that we're working on a solution right now to display not only or provide the audio, but also display the video in real time. Right now, there's a delay when we do it. We
Okay.
wanted it to be synchronized with the audio, so it's a little bit more of a technical solution with the wiring, but we are working on that, so we wouldn't be limited just to this chambers.
Okay, I guess that's acceptable enough, because we need to be able to accommodate our guests.
Excuse me.
When they do come to attend city meetings. I'd like to see us be able to seat people. It would be good for the police officers, taking a look at those that are suspicious of doing the wrong thing, instead of having a crowd of people standing in the back of the room. So that's my concern on that. Also, I'd like to remember, not to remind Mr. Wheatgriff about the lights in the study. Is there anything you have to say about that, whether you're going to be doing that for us or not?
Yes, the Heart of Cocoa lights we have looked at, and I do have the number of lights. There were some lights out. The bulbs have been replaced. There were a few lights that need the bulb and the ballast replaced, and those are being taken care of now too. So we expect all the Heart of Cocoa lights to be back operational.
Okay, can you make sure that this council get a report because of those historic lights? They were very expensive, and we don't need to have them as ornaments, and non-working ornaments. Thank you for that.
All right, no problem.
Also, if it's okay and it's legal, I'd like to let everybody know that's been calling me, asking me to put my name in the hat to run for mayor. I have done that. So I'm announcing tonight that my name is in the hat to become the next mayor for the great city of Cocoa for those 2 years.
Great.
So, all of you that's been calling, you need not call anymore. I'm doing it. And thank you for your encouragement.
Very good.
One other thing, the ethics seminar that I attended last week for elected officials, it is, I believe, a state requirement that all elected officials receive this 4-hour ethics training. That is a great thing for us because it defines what's legal and what's not legal as far as the Sunshine Law is concerned and other issues that confronts elected officials.
Right.
It's a great thing. I only wish that those that are seeking office could have this course prior to qualifying. Because it's not something that is to be taken lightly to be a city official or any official of governance. And maybe our super attorney can introduce some legislation to the state to have candidates go through the course prior to even applying.
It'd always be nice if our state legislature had to go through it, wouldn't it?
Yes, the state legislators are not bound by the Sunshine Law. Once you become a state legislator, the Sunshine Law doesn't apply.
I'd
And
be
it should.
happy if they, I'm not worried about them applying to the Sunshine Law. I'd just be happy if they had to have some ethics training.
Yes,
Can I
but
just-
anyway, I enjoyed it.
Some guys,
I've
their heads are
had my 4 hours of education on it, and I'm ready to rule.
Just to comment on that, Councilman Whipple, I just want to share with the council, the city attorney and the assistant city attorney, working with the city clerk's office on July 25th, we held ethics and public records training for all of our employees, or at least for, and it was videoed, so for those that could not make it, we'll push it out. And then by virtue of our membership in the Florida City County Managers Association, I know some consider it misery, and they said misery loves company. All the city managers, assistant city managers, members are required to take that as well by virtue of our membership, but actually it is really good because it does keep you sharp in terms of, because it's new situations arise, and it just kind of, I think Dr. Scott Paint did an excellent article recently, in terms about ethical conduct, and so if you're not aware of that, I would encourage you to read that by Dr. Scott Payne from League of Cities. It's a short read, but it's still.
This one was put on by Attorney Cliff Shepherd. He knows our super attorney, and I sort of bragged on him. He said, "Yeah, I know him."
Can I just say something you were saying? I know it's not my turn to talk, but because I'll forget it by the time it's time my turn to talk. You said that people running for office should attend that class. That's negative. We had that happen at Satellite Beach, and they actually asked the lady to leave because in the first 15 minutes, that's all she talked about, this and that. And it's done a meeting where you start explaining everything. She wanted an explanation on everything, and just got to the point, after an hour, we were still 2 hours behind in the course. So they suggested that anybody elected, after they get elected, they can go to the classes, and then they'll
Yes.
know more about it.
Well, maybe they should take it separately from
Yes,
everybody else.
maybe separately,
But
yes.
this lady was really, we were 2 hours, and they just rushed it through it. But, yeah, and so honestly, truthfully, I forget the attorney we had at the time over there, but he was very, everybody was rolling their, we went there to get our portion because we've been there. But she was asking questions that weren't even relevant to the Sunshine Law. She thought it was a training class for, to be on the city council, that's all.
Yes.
Brenda? Brenda? What do you?
My turn?
Yeah, Don's.
Don's done now?
He's starting.
Aren't you still talking, Don? A couple things real quick. One, I will also be going to League of Cities for the meetings down there this week. And I think I have the same committee meeting that the city manager has on Thursday, so I will be down there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Also, I just wanted to formally thank the Brevard Kennel Club, who is putting forward the funding to send Officer Hadaway and K-9 Copper to a week-long training in Virginia for tracking and rescue and scent work. The cost of the course is being paid for by the Brevard Kennel Club so that Officer Hadaway and Copper can get some specialized training in urban tracking, so. And thank the chief for giving Officer Hadaway the opportunity to go. And the city manager, if he'll sign the travel voucher.
Already did.
Okay. So, that's it for me.
Wow. Don, you want to go again?
Yeah, okay.
What else you
Well, I
got?
wasn't going again, I just.
I'm messing with you.
The population is gonna go up, John, because they're starting to develop those houses on Addison Creek, 250 homes.
Phase
Well,
two.
we got,
It's a lot of houses out there.
Yeah.
They're there and they're building, guy was saying they're gonna start off at 250. They'll get property in the back where they can grow another 200.
Wow.
So that's gonna boost our economy, our taxes and that up. And also, I wanted to just mention something before, and it's too bad she's not here, Miss, what was it, Eastburn that was talking about the,
Tammy, yeah.
yeah, Tammy. Well, if you all remember, she was at this podium that last meeting, I think it was last meeting or the meeting before. And I asked John specifically to come back to us before discussing with anybody. Am I correct? And then last night he told us about what was going on, so, but her trying to degrade John and put him down to something that he shouldn't be put down for. He was doing exactly what I asked him to do. I asked him to come back to us before going back to anybody else. So, her the way saying that she don't wanna talk to the little guy, he's the one that's fighting for the little guys. You were at the meeting last night, you knew what was going on, right? So, and that's all, I wanna thank everyone, well, ain't too many people left, but thank them for coming down, and thank you, and have a nice night.
Okay. Okay, next,
District
What-
3 Town Hall.
Town hall meeting.
Town hall.
Oh, yeah.
And
Town hall.
next Tuesday night at the Fabulous Country Club of Lost Lakes.
Yes.
6 o'clock, we have our town hall meeting.
Paradise.
The gate will be open at 5 PM.
Did you hold off the rain this year?
Will there be voters there?
Oh, yeah, there'll be voters there, and then the pool will be open, so bring your bathing suits if you want to go.
Last 2 years, there's been thunderstorms.
So we had a
Yeah,
lightning
that's
storm
true,
last
yeah.
year. No, I don't think
So
we'll be
that's,
swimming.
yeah, the gates will be open at 5 o'clock, and we just had the
Needing cover.
driveways all repaved and lined, so, we'll be all set, and so we'll look forward to seeing you at the largest town meeting in Cocoa.
Oh,
Here we go.
Had to
go.
get that
go.
in there.
There we
Yeah,
go.
see, that's a challenge. He just threw it down.
He's actually
Yeah,
right.
Throwing down the
As
gauntlet.
long as I've been here. This big.
Right, John? At least we weren't
I don't
talking about
take
the number one
attendance.
district in the city of Cocoa.
Oh, here we go. Yep. Okay, Jerry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to also mention that I will be attending the Florida League of Cities Conference, along with Councilwoman Brenda and City Manager John Takanich. So I will be traveling starting Thursday morning, and I will be gone, I'll be out of town until Saturday, probably afternoon. More, yeah. I also want to thank Karen for her presentation tonight. I thought she did an excellent job.
Yeah, she
It was
did
very
good.
clear.
Quote of the night.
The information was very direct. I mean, there was no, ambiguous information there, so it was very well done, and thank you for that presentation. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank all the members of the audience who came tonight. Yeah, I mean, really, it's important for us to have them here. I mean, we need to hear from the public. Whether we agree with you or not is beside the point. We need to hear your voices. You help us make the important decisions that we vote on up here. So without your input And without your guidance, we don't really know what the public is asking for or what they really want to see in the city. And I think really, someone said it tonight, we all want the same thing. We all want Cocoa to thrive. We all want Cocoa to grow and prosper. I think there's just some differences of opinion, but on how to go about that. But I want to thank all the members of the audience who came tonight and who are listening at home. So, and also one of the members of our audience that's still here tonight, this gentleman right here in the front row. He brought up something that happened in District 4 on, let's see, what day was that? July 28th at the Clear Lake Education Center. Brevard County had their back-to-school giveaway, and what'd you say, over 2,000 students? Were almost 2,000? Yeah.
Wow.
So I'd like to say, kudos to the Brevard County School for putting out such a great effort. I know the city had a drive, a lot of merchants in the village had a drive, so businesses throughout, the county had back-to-school drives. So it takes a participation from all of us, to help our children, to make sure they have the necessary tools when they start school. There's nothing worse for a child to start school and not have the necessary items it takes to be successful in the classroom.
Yes.
Our teachers can only do so much. They have to have the materials, they have to have the tools. So I want to thank the school board for their, vision and having the education center out there at Clear Lake, at the former Clear Lake Middle School. I know the teachers can go in there and they can shop. They can go in there and get items that they need for their classrooms and provide children who come to the classroom without some of the items the other children have. So that they don't feel, like they are different from anyone else, because that's really important. A child's self-esteem is so vital at that age. So anyway, and I want to thank that gentleman in the audience for bringing that to my attention, because I was actually out of town when that transpired. So thank you, sir, and thank you for coming. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, very good. Don, you got anything else? Anything else you want to say?
I make a motion we adjourn.
Well, you're close, but not yet. Yeah. Okay, John, Walmart Distribution Center's having their ribbon cutting,
Actually,
grand opening. When is that?
no.
Is that 22nd?
There's an email that went out that they
yeah.
were rescheduling it.
August 22nd,
Okay,
unless they changed it.
That's what I got, August 22nd.
Is it a recent one? Because I know there was one that went
That's a
out.
recent one, yeah.
And who all's going?
I'm going.
I'm going.
Planning to go.
Yeah, I'll be there.
It's unbelievable.
It is. And this time I'm gonna wear the right shoes.
Yeah.
So I
Well, I don't think you're gonna go inside for the ribbon
There was
cutting.
guys walking out of the, one of the 10 below room, and they had frost on them. And I look over
They
at
do.
Jerry, and Jerry he's wearing sandals, and her feet are turned red.
Hey, they're cute sandals. They just
Yeah, they were cute sandals.
happen to belong there.
Anyways, okay, good, so that's gonna be a great
just-
day
I
there.
got an email from, and we need to follow up on this, because I did get an email from Samantha, I was correct, that she saw in the Chamber of Z-Blast that the ribbon cutting for Walmart was canceled on the 22nd. And she sent that to Larry, so Larry's following up, so we will get back with you.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But so that's one.
I got you. Okay, so let us know. Yeah, that's important. Also, obviously, City Hall Selfie Day, some of us are gonna be there. We got a banner. It's gotta be a really good picture, that's all I can tell you. So, the whole state chimes in on this, you know.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
You gotta stop over. You gotta be there. Okay, also, I wanna thank, Florida League of Cities, Scott Dudley, the Director of Legislative Affairs. He's the Director. He stopped by Cocoa today, and we had a selfie done with him, and him and I were talking issues coming up, and he's a big support for the city, and I appreciate him. He went out and held a sign for me for a while. So he, great guy. solid. And he shares the same concerns we have. So you guys say hi when you're down there and give him those lapel pins.
I will give him
you know.
those pins, yes.
And I forgot to do that. And then also, I had a mayor's meeting Saturday, and we talked about all the usual things, the lagoon, the roads, public safety, the upcoming legislative session, growth. For the first time ever, I sat in a meeting where, 10 of us on a round table looked at each other, and 2 or 3 of them said, we've had so much growth, like the mayor of West Melbourne, they're at 13.2%. I don't know how many more years they can appreciate like that. 13.2, I think they had. So, they're starting to ask the question in South County, like, how much more are we gonna grow, and how many more people can we hold or sustain? So it was just interesting. I don't really have an opinion. That was the first time I heard that from the really successful growth cities. They're getting worried, And then also, we had a couple of South County guys on the beach. They were talking about, shark fishing and some of the sustainability and the satellite beaches sewer woes. They're trying to figure all that out. So it's been interesting. A lot of infrastructure problems. Apparently, there's some areas in the south part of the river, the lagoon, that runoff is directly into the lagoon, off some of the highways. And so, there's a lot of problems here that really need to be dealt with. And it was a great meeting. I thought I left there 3.5 hours. It was informational. It was interesting the whole time. And also, I'll leave you with this. Clarence, you're talking about the sunshine law and the ethics training and all those things. It's all important. But I always like to leave something kind of light. Here we are. I'm in Tallahassee. I'm in the Capitol building a few months ago, and step in the elevator, and I got a Democratic lobbyist on a legislator on one side of me, Republican legislator on the other side, and they both had the lapel pins. And I'm sitting there as we're going up about 8 floors, and then one guy says, "Well, how do you feel about this bill?" He goes, "Well, I like the bill. I'll help you. I'll help you." And they started talking details. I'm like, for us at the local level,
Yeah.
it's a sunshine law violation. But these guys are These guys are talking business 24/7, and I'm happy that both sides are talking. And just to leave a little happy thought here, 95 to 98% of the legislation that gets passed in Tallahassee, is passed with bipartisanship. So that's a good part of the story.
That is.
But we're gonna be ready for them. Even though I'm leaving, we're gonna be ready for them this year if they want to come up with some ridiculous things that the local cities and counties got to handle. But it's just an interesting story. So that's it. I'm done.
Your turn, Don.
Don, you want to try it again? No?
Okay, let's try it again.
Okay.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh,
I'll second it.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
That's right, Gary.